All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. I'm super excited to be joined by Stephen Cochran, a singer-songwriter, gentleman that runs his own record label. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out Vet Life. Vet Life is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and Vet Life is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to Vet Life, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, Stephen, I want to start this episode the way that I start kind of all my podcast episodes, even though I think we'll spend the large majority about like where you are currently and the projects you're working on and the things you're doing. But let's take it all the way back, man. Let's take it, where were you born and raised? What were you like as a young kid? What were the things that, you know, were influential to you, or what did you think life had in store for you? And then we'll slowly build up to where we are today.
Good to go. Yeah, first off, I look like a walking billboard for Vet Life. I'm all in on Vet Life. So Josh is doing great things up here in Michigan, and we hope to work with him, you know, more with what we talked about later. I was born, which I just found out recently, in Ohio. My whole life, I thought I was born in Kentucky because that's where I was raised, and you know, I'm a big Kentucky Wildcats fan. So it's kind of like when Hank Hill found out he wasn't a true Texan. It was like, oh man, what do you mean I'm from Ohio? I'm not a Buckeye.
And you said just recently.
Yeah, well, I mean, I knew that we were where I'm from in Kentucky. There's Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia. It's kind of like a tri-state area, but I was raised in Ashland and Pikeville, Kentucky, and right across the river is Point Pleasant, West Virginia from Ashland, and then right across the river from that is Gallipolis, Ohio. Well, my mom had went to stay with my aunt in Point Pleasant, and they didn't like the hospital there, so they took her across the river to Ohio. So I was born in Ohio and then brought back to West Virginia and then Kentucky. So yeah, I'm kind of like an all-over baby, I guess. It was like I spent, from birth to 4 in Ashland and Pikeville, and then we moved to Nashville because my dad was a songwriter. And so it was, his dream that got us to Nashville, not mine, eventually. But he worked on the railroad, and he'd always had a dream of writing songs at the major level. And he was doing, he had a tri-state hit, Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, was playing his stuff a lot. And back then, in the early days of radio, you could have tri-state hits. You would have all these like local stars around the country because radio hadn't really, conglomerized. Like you didn't have the Clear Channels and the CBSs owning, these major, all the stations around the nation to where you have to get in good with one organization to get played on all radio stations. You could, Loretta Lynn was known for, she just jumped in a car and they just started driving to all these radio stations around the country, and then eventually they just got her on all these, singly owned radio stations. So that was what my dad was doing.
What was that like as a kid, like knowing that your dad was a singer-songwriter? It's pretty unique. I mean,
really
obviously
cool.
He worked on the railroad, but it's like you witnessed a man with a dream.
Yeah, exactly. And, that was the thing, is that up till my dad, my dad's father was 20 years Air Force. My mom's father worked at GM for 20 years and was also in the Army. So it was very, you get a job, you take care of your family. Dreams are something that you put to the side and go get a job and support your family. And so there was a lot of our family members that when Dad, left his well-paying railroad job to move us like the Beverly Hillbillies to Nashville and go chase a dream, that even my mother's father was like, "What are you doing? Like you can't feed my grandchild on dreams." And that was something that he showed our whole family, that, you can make a living doing something that you love. You don't have to be stuck in these jobs or these careers where you just hate life every day and you work yourself to an early grave. So, yeah, he did that, and it was super cool to, because like I said, when he had both jobs, we lived where there was a train track right behind our house, and he did that on purpose because his train would go by there, and when it would start slowing down to go in, he would jump the fence and come in the house and see me as a kid. Now, I'd be outside playing, and he'd jump the fence and come over and play with me for a little bit and then jump the fence and get back on the train. And then on the weekends, I'd see him get to go open for all these, Alabama and, back in the day was Charlie McClain and all these big artists that were local but still getting big. And so it was like that, almost like I know my dad's a superhero, but during the week he doesn't wear his cape kind of deal. But then when we moved to Nashville, it got, like, I think after he had got the tri-state hit and he got signed with RCA and we moved to Nashville, it was, my mom said it best. They were at a Burger King and he was on tour, I think, with Charlie Daniels or Hank Jr., and all these people were lined up. They were just trying to eat, and there was like people lined up to get his autograph. And my mom was like, I didn't sign up for this. Like I married a dude that worked on the railroad. I didn't marry, you know, a guy that's imploding right in front of us, because we had never seen anything like that. Like, we had never been a part of anything. And then we got a big house and a neighborhood. I was going to school with all these country music superstars' kids. And, you know, it was weird. Like, on certain days, there'd just be lines of tour buses coming to pick their kids up so that everybody get to ride on a tour bus. It was crazy to go just from a little town in Kentucky to, you know, meeting all of these people that you'd seen on TV or that you had heard on the radio. And so I grew up a fan, not just the son of an artist. I grew up really loving country music and loving the artists that came with it. So when I got into music myself, it was a whole different ball game, because
So you basically got to see what was possible out of life too. You saw the railroad job and the traditional thing and what your grandparents would have told you to do, like go get a safe job, work somewhere, take care of your family. That's the American dream. But you got to see somebody that kind of broke the mold, that broke through, and you got to say, wow, like look at what my father is doing by following a dream. When did music hit you, and was it instant that you thought, hey, I've already been surrounded by this, like I can do that, or was it a gradual process of learning to believe in yourself, etc.?
So I hated music for a long time too. So there was a period once my mom and dad gotten divorced, because the business does take a toll. You know, when you're gone 200 days a year, and yeah, you're sending money back home, but there's no dad. Like, yeah, I had a dad somewhere. He's out there. He's touring. He's someone else's dad right now because he's on stage every night, you know, with all these other kids, and they're coming to his shows. But he wasn't there for me. And so I started to resent music. Like, it's taken my dad away. And then after the divorce, I really never got to see him because they weren't living together and he was still on the road. And, yeah, he would send, you know, money back or whatever. But with them being divorced, even like, you know, normal divorces, like I might get to see him every weekend, or, you know, that he was gone on the weekend. So I didn't get to see him. There was a time from like 8 to 13 that I maybe saw him 3 times. Yeah. And
that's like the dark side of being majorly successful or blowing up in something in life that nobody ever really considers. Like that artist on the stage is sleeping in a random hotel or a random spot every different night, probably jumping back into a tour bus, not seeing their loved ones, not losing moments that they can never get back. And like at the time, yeah, you're making huge money. You're passionately on that stage sharing your, you know, your dream with other people. But it's like your son, every day, another day ticks by that you're not going to be ever able to get back.
Dude, and it's a common story. Like the funny thing is that you see all these country artists or any artist in music on television. It looks so glamorous, and it's like, oh man, they're like the royalty. But really, they're the circus. They're the circus that comes to town, and it's just no different than being a carny. You're living on a bus. And buses look great when they have them cleaned up. But when you've been living on a bus for 200 days and you've got a whole band on there with you, that's like 7 dudes on a bus. Just think about like 7 dudes in any place. You know what I'm saying? It's going to stink. Air conditioners go out. Buses are not built to tour like that. I don't care how great your bus is. You're always going to have them break down. They're going to have to bring new buses out. So it's not as glamorous as it looks, and it's way harder than what people think, too.
It's a little bit of that be careful what you wish for, because you might see the person on the stage and say, I want that life, but you're not looking at what comes with that life. But the extreme sacrifice, the time away from home, the exhaustion, the physical and mental fatigue.
Yeah.
You know, and even something you love to do, if you have to do it to a certain level,
it still comes a job. Yeah. And then that's the double-edged sword you're talking about too, because when you take what is your love, but even in my case, what was my therapy, and I made it a job or a career, well, now I've just taken away the one thing that gives me passion, love, all the things that I wake up in the morning for. Like, I've taken that love away from it because I've turned it into a job. And it is a job. You know, again, you don't see all the things that go into being an artist. When you're coming up, you're getting up at 6 a.m. to be at morning drive time radio. You got to be at noon radio. Then you've got to be at the afternoon rush hour radio. Then you got to go do your sound check. Then you got to do right before the show. You do the show. You open for the bigger artists. You don't even get to stay and see them play because you got to jump on the bus, head to the next city, and get ready for the next show. So it's a lot more work than what people think. It's not just living your dream. There's a lot of work that goes into it.
So how did you start to fix the relationship with music where your father's gone? you see your family go through a divorce. As a young teenager, that invokes all kind of emotion and usually resentment and anger and frustration. How did that heal? What is the relationship like with your father when you do decide to get into music? And what made you decide to, like, despite seeing what my father and family went through, this is the path for me?
So yeah, so it's weird how that happened because my dad was always buying instruments. Like every Christmas, birthday, it was, hey, you want to play the drums? Here's some drums. He was always trying to not push it on me, but just letting me know it's there if you want it, and I'm just going to buy you every instrument until you figure it out. And I even remember up into college, I was playing and singing, but I did it not to have a career. I was doing it to pick up girls like anybody else would. And I was like, hey, this Kenny Chesney said it in a song, this old guitar taught me how to score. And it was. I was, hanging out with fraternities, and they would always have me come over and bring my guitar and play some songs to woo all the girls at their fraternity party. And I learned then, like, hey, this is an option. But I was also playing sports. I played lacrosse for Western Kentucky University. I played football up in high school and was, trying to play in college. So I had that what every athlete has in the back of their head, like, I'm going to go pro with this. I'm going to play pro somewhere. But at this, also had in my head, like, that's also probably not an option. Like, this is probably where it ends as far as sports goes for me. But music was always there. I do not ever remember taking it serious. I would pawn guitars to go on, like, spring break, and then my dad would go and buy them back and then give them. And I remember he did it like 3 times. He was like, this is the last time I'm not buying this guitar again. And so I don't think that I truly patched my relationship with music until, like, really 100% until after I was injured in Afghanistan, because then I started seeing it for different. I didn't see it as a way to make money. I didn't see it as a way to pick up girls. I saw it for what music truly is, which is therapy. And it's therapy for the listener, it's therapy for the writer, it's therapy for the person who's singing it, because all 3 of those people have to feel it to make it work. And so that's when I really started seeing, like, man, this is my way out of this hole that I've gotten myself into from combat and the things I'd done. And so, yeah, even though before, I had a developmental deal and was working towards music before I joined the Marine Corps. Like, I was already writing and producing stuff with one of the greatest songwriters, Mark Malone. He wrote actually the theme song for our college, Western Kentucky University, called High on a Hill, or the Hilltoppers. So he's written, and the funny thing about Mark too, he's also listed on in Country Weekly, in one of the first magazines where they reviewed one of my albums, as the best and worst songwriter on my album. and the great part is he put that on his Wikipedia page. It was like, Mark Malone is known for Stephen Cochran's best and worst song on his Country Weekly 2009. So, and I actually thought they got it switched. They called the worst song the best song, and the best song the worst song. I was like, this is madness. But yeah, he and I went to college, and we were writing and doing things then, but still, I didn't really take it serious. I took it like as that this is something that's just been given to me. Like, hey, I've been given this opportunity because of my dad's hard work, not because of anything I've done. And so I took it for granted. And then once 9/11 happened, we watched the towers fall. I have never been drawn to do anything in my life. Like, I up till that point, and I just skipped through life. Like, I was just like, hey, I'm going to college. I'm doing this. I might play music on Saturday. I just had no structure to what I was doing. I was just kind of free falling through life. And 9/11 happened. And man, I never had an ambition to join the military. Like, there was no option where I was like, well, if this doesn't work, I'm going to join the Marine Corps, or I'm going to join the military. No options. I had never even thought about it. And so, especially the Marine Corps, like, my dad's Army, my grandpa's Army, my other grandfather's Air Force, there are no Marines hardly in my family. I've got a cousin who's a Marine that I saw, and that's really what stuck out in my head. My cousin had came home from boot camp when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And I was here in Waterford. He's from Waterford, Michigan, too. And so I was visiting my grandparents that summer, and I remember I was, like, playing in a mud puddle, just, like, outside playing in a mud puddle. And I remember watching his Coraframs, which are the shoes that we wear, the shiny Marine Corps shoes, step up. And I just kind of followed his shoes up, his dress blues, and was just like, wow. Like, in my head, it was burned like I've never seen a superhero, but this dude's probably the closest thing I'd ever, like, those uniforms, man, come on, Marine Corps uniforms are sharp as can be. So I remember seeing that, and I guess when 9/11 happened, and I knew that my mission was that I had to join the military to go to go help or right these wrongs. I don't know what it was. Just a sense of that I have to do this. And so I went straight to Marine Corps recruiter, and I was like, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And he was like, dude, go finish college and come back in as an officer. We're going to need officers. And I was like, listen, sir, there's the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force are in the same strip mall, and I'm going to go to all of them after I leave. I came here first. And he was like, well, let's go take an ASVAB. And so we went in, we took it, and over the next course of a month, I ended up dropping out of college and enlisted in the Marine Corps. And, you know, I didn't take an easy route. I went infantry. I was an 0311, which is a basic infantryman. And, you know, my recruiter begged me not to go that route. He said, you can have any job in the Marine Corps, and you've got this music thing going. We can use you in the Marine Corps, you know, do the Elvis deal, we'll do this, all that. And is not what I was on a mission that I was going to go and fight. And like, I had no clue what I was getting into, man. Like, I think I'd watched one episode of Band of Brothers on HBO and was like, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. And then, you know, you go through boot camp and you learn a little bit, and then you finally get, again, be careful what you wish for. Because when you finally get it, like, man, I don't know if I'm ready for this. This is real combat. And combat's not, there's no movies. I can think of, I've seen pretty much every movie. I think Saving Private Ryan would probably be close for World War II veterans. But I've not seen, there was a show on HBO called Generation Kill. Real close. They got pretty close to what it's like in Iraq for the invasion. But still, there's a lot of things you just can't capture. The smells, the audience will never be able to smell what it smells like in combat. They'll never be able to feel how far away you are from home when you are in combat. Like, you want to feel alone? Send yourself halfway around the world to someone else's country when you're getting shot at from both sides, and it's just you and two other dudes trying to get back to your vehicle. But even when you get to your vehicle, you're still, you know, 3,000 miles, 6,000 miles, 16 hours on a flight from home. So if you've ever wanted your mama or your daddy, you ain't ever wanted them like you would when you're in combat. And so made it through Iraq, and I think that kind of, you know, by the end of Iraq, I was a team leader. With 2nd LAR, which is a reconnaissance element. We're light armored reconnaissance. We ride on those, I don't know if anybody's ever seen, they're called LAVs. They're cool little 8-wheeled vehicles or amphibious. They shoot lots of different weapons, 25 millimeters and stuff like that. So we are the scouts that ride on the back, and they'll punch us out to go do some route reconnaissance and stuff like that. So it's the fastest ground reconnaissance that there is. So by the end of that, I was a team leader with my own team, came back to Camp Lejeune, and we got ready to go to Afghanistan for our push with the 22nd M.E.U, which is a Marine Expeditionary Unit. And so we went with the 22nd M.E.U B.L.T. 16 2004 to Afghanistan. And we were some of the first Marines to ever push into the Helmand Province, which now people understand the Helmand Province was where the Russians had kind of lost it and where we really got into the meat of the fighting. The first Marine that was actually killed in Afghanistan was one of the guys I served with, Corporal Ron Payne Jr., one of the greatest Marines to probably ever live, and I'm not even exaggerating about that. This dude was like 6'7" and could just disappear. And plus he had his heart in the right position. There's a lot of people that join the military, even like myself, that was like, I'm ready to go to war. And you don't learn until later that there's a lot more to the military than just going to war. We have humanitarian missions. We have things that we're doing to try to make the countries we're going to better, not just go in there and, you know, shoot and blow everything up and then leave. The new military that we have does not do that. If we go into a country, before we leave, we try to fix the things that we may have broken while we were there and give them a better, you know, even with Afghanistan, when we left, there was women going to school. There were so many schools that we had put together, and Ron's heart was in that. That's what he was a true Christian, man. Like, I remember us stopping at Libo ports in Malta, trying to figure out how drunk we could get in Malta. And he was like trying to get us into Bible study. And so he was a true Christian, man, if I'd ever met one. And even when he was killed, we surveyed his gear. And in his Bible, he only had one verse underlined. It was, greater hath no love than a man that gives up his life for his friends. So he knew. He'd already told his family he wasn't coming home. He said that he'd already talked to God, and God told him that this was his mission, that all he prayed for then was that his family understood when they got the call that this was what he was put on earth to do, was to save the lives of his men. I mean, he even re-enlisted to do it. That's how crazy his story is. So that was Afghanistan, no joke, man. That was Afghanistan was Iraq was real, man. You want to test your warrior spirit. It's going to get tested in Afghanistan.
So let's talk about some perspective before we move on your story, because you've talked about so many powerful moments in your life, and I just don't want to skip past this quickly. When you look back now as the Stephen Cochran who went through music yourself, the ups and downs, the difficulties, the dark side of the industry, and you look back to your father, how has your perspective changed about what the man went through and what he sacrificed and what he tried to do in pursuit of his dream? And then second part would be the perspective of the military service. Now that you're far removed from it, from the young emotional kid that felt this drive in his heart, seeing, you know, a terrorist attack on the country, like everybody remembers where they were in that moment. You know, how has your perspective shifted from your military service? Let's start with the perspective of your father from having witnessed that and then following the path yourself and then the military.
Yeah, so it's completely changed from my dad. You know, I understand a lot of what he went through. Even, you know, I have small children. I've got a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, and I've got some older kids that are 12 and 14. But every time that I have to go away to do a show or, you know, or miss an event, it tears my heart apart. And I don't tour anymore. Like when I had my 5-year-old, I stopped touring. I've been retired from touring now for almost 6 years, but I still do things in lieu of my non-for-profit that I help. And so I have to fly different places and leave them, and it tears me apart. So I can't imagine. And me and my dad were really close growing up. So like before the divorce, like I was a daddy's boy. And so I can't imagine what it was like for him to be on the road and not to be able to see me and be there with me. But also, I learned a lot from that. You know, I saw what it did to my family when he did that. So immediately when I started having younger children, I was done. I knew that this was, you know, I was a little bit older in life. I didn't get married until I was 36. So, you know, I knew if this is the dream I'm going to chase, it's just like almost the joke that we have in the military. If the Marine Corps wanted you to have a wife, we would have issued you one. So you know, I look at it as a little bit different because I've been lucky to have men in my life, my grandfather, my mom's dad, my dad's dad, and my dad, who have never tried to be perfect to me. Like they've never said, hey, I'm your dad, I'm your grandfather, watch what I do everything I do, follow what I do, be me, basically, right? They did the exact opposite. They would show me their mistakes. And they would say, now, do you see how this messed my life up? Do you see how I'm hurting from this now? Like, especially my grandfather, my mother's dad. He would get on his hands and knees and beg me, please don't be like me. Please don't be like me. And he told me, and my grandmother would always say, he tells you too much. But from even like 8, 9, 10 years old, I can remember him sitting me down and having like real men talk to me and being like, this is where Papa messed up at. And I need you to see this so that you don't recreate it. And this is something that us as men and fathers, we have to do. Because if we hold ourselves on this pedestal, we're never going to break generational cycles that we're caught in. And so we've got to teach, because none of us are perfect. And even though you might be a little bit better than your dad or your grandfather, you're still making mistakes that your kids can learn from. And you've got to sit them down and be like, hey, you see how daddy lost his temper right there? That ain't cool. That's not going to be good for you. Like, and even be like, that's bad cholesterol, like you're going to have a stroke, you know, so it's using those moments to teach is what helped me. And so I saw that if I'm going to be in the military, I'm not going to be married. If I'm going to go after this music career, I'm not going to be married. I'm not going to put a family through what we were put through just because this is my dream. You know, even it's your dream, you can't ask someone else to buy in to what you got to go through, because you know as well as I do, man, those early days are hard. Like you're eating trash, you're sleeping trash. It's hard. And to think that you're going to drag kids and a wife through the early days of any dream is just, it's madness to me. And so, and I'm not knocking anybody that's out there chasing their dreams with families. I'm not doing that at all, because it can work as a team, but it was something that I was not going to do. And so I knew that when I met my wife, when we started having kids, that this is now my dream. This is the dream that I also had. I always had the dream of a family. So when I got to have that, I had to let go of the other one, because it changes. Now, this is a full-time job. I've got 5 kids and a wife, and this is what I've got to go focus on. Music's still there, and I can use it to help people, but this is what I got to focus on. So I learned a lot from my dad. When I say that, I mean I learned a lot from his mistakes, but I also learned a lot from the things that he did right in music. So I took the good, I took the bad, and I just tried to make a better life for it. And then as far as the military goes, the funny thing is, man, is that the different branches of the military all handle things kind of differently, and I'll say this: they program their soldiers, sailor, airmen, and Marines and coasties differently, because we all have different jobs. The Air Force doesn't need to be as high strung as the Marine Corps does, or the Army. The coasties don't have to be as high strung as the Navy. So we all have different jobs, and we all kind of have to be programmed to do those jobs. The Air Force could not be the Air Force if they had a Marine Corps drill instructor just yelling at them all the damn time. There's no way that you can concentrate on the high level of aeronautics and things that they have to do with that level of stress down your throat. But the Marine Corps also could not be the Marine Corps if we had Air Force instructors instructing us, because there is a level of stress that we have to work under that you've got to be able to deal with. And so I'll say, as a Marine, you're never really removed from the military. You're always a Marine. Like you've never heard anybody say, I'm an Army, or I'm an Air Force, or I'm a Navy, but you'll definitely hear them say, I'm a Marine, because once you earn the title, it can't be taken from you. Like you're a Marine forever. And so, and you call it brainwashing, call it whatever it was. I was a little bit older when I joined the Marine Corps. I was 20. I turned 21 after I got out. So I was 20 years old when I joined the Marine Corps. I already went to college, already kind of done some things. There wasn't, like I said, I had so many people in the military. My grandfathers and my uncles had all sat me down and kind of gave me listen, don't be dumb, don't be a bullet sponge, don't do this. And so I had a sense about myself that I kind of knew what I was going into already. So I don't believe I was brainwashed, but I definitely loved the Marine Corps, and I loved a lot of things they taught me: honor, courage, commitment. Those things you can use in life forever. Integrity is something that my oldest kids at 4 and 5 years old in kindergarten, they asked the class, who knows what integrity is? And my oldest son raised his hand at 5 and stood up and said, doing the right thing when nobody's watching. And they were just like, what? Oh, your dad's a Marine. Okay, I got it. So it's something that I will always be attached to. I will die a Marine. When I'm buried, they'll bury me in my dress blues. I don't care what I've done in music. All the awards that I've gotten for music, the greatest award, other than having my children, that I've gotten in life is walking across the parade deck and getting an Eagle, Globe, and Anchor stuck in my skin and handshaked on an Eagle, Globe, and Anchor and being called a United States Marine for the first time. I mean, after those 13 weeks of working your tail off to get to that graduation, it was, you tell yourself you're not going to cry, and then you get there and you're biting your cheeks and doing everything you can not to cry. So, yeah, being a Marine is something I'll always be. Now, being removed from the military and being removed from, a buddy of mine, Tyler J., has a great song called The Circus. And he says it the best in the circus. He says, I may not miss the circus, but I damn sure miss the clowns. It's because it says it all right there, man. It's the military can be a circus, and the things that you do, hurry up and wait is a thing, and it gets frustrating when grown men are telling other grown men how to wear their clothes, and it's a lot of bullshit that you go through. But the dudes that you're serving with, that's who you do it for. Like if I had to go back to combat tomorrow, the only way I would go is if my guys were going, because that's who you're fighting for. At the end of the day, it doesn't come about the terrorist bombings. It's not about freedom. It's not about the things that we hold dear here in America. It's really the dude to your left and your right. That's who you end up fighting for at the end of the day, because you're like, I'm getting home and I'm taking as many of these dudes home with me, and you're fighting to get back home. Like that's really it is. You're fighting to get back home. And also the Marine Corps, it's not our job to die for our country. It's our job to make that sumbitch die for his country. So, it's always a part of, now for me, I look at the military as I did my job as an active duty Marine. I did whatever they asked me to do. I went to whatever country they asked me to go to, and I did whatever job they asked me to do. But now I've got a different mission. Instead of taking lives, we have to save some lives. And so, using music, using everything I know about the military and music and trying to combine those together, and what I know about music therapy, and help as many veterans as they're returning home as we can, because, you know, we've got that number of 22 veterans a day are committing suicide, and that's bullshit. It really is. And the VA will even play these games. I was just talking to somebody the other day that one of my buddies, another guy that works with our organization, Sal Gonzalez, is one of the spokesmen for Wounded Warrior Project. And, you know, the VA will put out these pamphlets. Hey, you know, make sure your spokesmen are letting people know that we've dropped the number from 22 to 17. Only 17 veterans are committing suicide. Now, man, if we were losing 17 dandelions a day, we'd have somebody out on every street corner talking about, we got to save the dandelions. But we are losing not 17 veterans a day. That's bullshit number. That's again, propaganda that we're playing to go, hey, look, we're winning the war. Let's not focus on it as much anymore. But we're not, because California, Alaska, Texas, they don't report veteran suicides. In Michigan, the National Guard doesn't report them as veteran suicides, which anybody that served in combat knows that our National Guard, they were doing so many tours. That's not what the National Guard was built to do. But, man, I can remember them National Guard guys coming in just left and right. I mean, I think they were doing more tours to Iraq and Afghanistan than even active duty units were doing. And so to think that these guys, one, it's worse for them, because when I went to combat and I came back home, I was still with all the dudes I'd went to combat with every day. We lived together. So if I wanted to go talk to somebody, I didn't feel that, man, I can't talk to them because they wasn't there, you know, feeling. I just went and was like, hey, man, you remember that shit that happened in Afghanistan? Man, I was messed up. And we would talk through it, which is therapy. But the guys that are in the reserves or in the National Guards, they go and fight a war, and then they come back home and they're sent back to their hometown where there's probably nobody else there that's fought a war. And they got to sit there. And I always say that we have these moments where it's the, I should just shut up and never talk again moment. You come back home or on leave or whatever, or for the National Guard and Reserves, they go back home after combat, and you're talking to maybe your best friends. You're just hanging out. And you tell them a story about combat that you and your buddies in the military think's hilarious. And then you get that, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, damn, dude, are you okay? Look. And then your brain just goes, oh, shoot, I'm weird. Shut up. Don't talk anymore. Don't tell those stories. You're not supposed to talk. So then that just starts getting bottled up and bottled up and bottled up. And, dude, you cannot live with that pressure. If you do not get it out, you're going to die by stress, alcoholism, drugs, or your own hand. It's going to happen. There's nobody strong enough to keep this inside forever. I mean, look at our World War II veterans. Look at our Vietnam veterans. We didn't have a term for post-traumatic stress. We called it shell shock or crazy Uncle Bob that we just leave alone. Don't look crazy Uncle Bob in the eyes. Everybody has that joke. There's comedians that have jokes about their Vietnam veteran uncles who's like, you know, hey, Uncle Bob, don't look him in the eyes because he's seen some shit in Vietnam. You know, there's even a joke of, I'm a big comedy fan, so I watch comedians, and there was a joke, I can't remember who did it, and it's a female comic. She was talking about everybody has that cute Uncle Peepap or Grandpa Peepap that's so cute, and you see him on the holidays, and you want to pinch his little wrinkly cheeks. Grandpa Peepap's got bodies from World War II. Like, he was a badass in his time. So everybody's got those stories from those people who served in our past, and those dudes, let me tell you something, the greatest generation, the World War II generation, if they couldn't handle the pressure of what they went through, our weak-ass kids today, and I say that with love. I consider myself a lot weaker than anybody that went to World War II. The dudes that went to World War II, my kid who rides a bike has more protection on him when he rides his bicycle than the dudes who fought World War II. That is truly the greatest generation. We got, you know, from the World War II generation, we've convinced ourselves that we're a warrior society because we don't understand superpower and warrior society are two different things. Yes, we are a superpower. We have the biggest weapons. We could blow up the world if we wanted to, but we also are not a warrior society. We have never been a warrior society. Maybe the Native community at one point could have been looked at as a warrior society when you start breaking down the Navajos and Apache and different like that. But when you look at America, since before the revolution, warrior societies don't fight in line units, guys. So we've never been a warrior society. Yet for 200 plus years, we fought every warrior society across the world. Now we're taking boys and girls who have air conditioning and PlayStations and Xboxes, and they get a car when they're 16, and they live in a house, And we're taking those boys and girls, we're giving them 13 weeks of training at the most, and we're sending them to Afghanistan, who's been at war for 3,000 years. I mean, you can go back to Rudyard Kipling was writing poems about "O ye English soldier," when he said, when you're down and out on Afghanistan's plains, this is from the 1600s, 1700s maybe, when you're down and out on Afghanistan's plains and the women come out to collect what remains, just roll to your right and blow out your brains and go to your God like a soldier. That's Rudyard Kipling, "O ye English soldier," from 18th, 19th century. So this is the people that we're sending our boys and girls to go fight. War is like running the water for them. Their kids know war from the time that they're born. Our kids don't know that. But we're sending them over there with one arm tied behind their back, by the way, called the Geneva Convention. Here you go. We're going to tie your right arm behind your back. We're going to go make you fight these real warriors who don't know what the Geneva Convention is, and they're going to use everything that they've got to kill you, and you got to go play by these rules. And then we want you to be better than them. Oh, and we can't drop the bombs that we have because you're in a mountain range, so you're chasing these dudes through mountains. Look, when you level out the fighting field, they can take a sheet, a brown sheet, and disappear. We spend millions of dollars in camouflage, and it doesn't match what this is their region. We cannot expect to take these boys and girls of ours, give them 13 weeks of training, send them to go fight warrior nations, and then come home and not have any problems with the things that they had to do in combat. That shit don't make sense when I say it. It's not going to make sense in application. So my motto is they call it post-traumatic stress disorder. I think that's bullshit, man. Like, there's no disorder in this. If you can go over there and do the things that we had to do and then come home and not have any problems, you're just good to go, you might be the one that needs to talk to somebody. Like, that's the one I think that's maybe not aware of the things that they're holding inside, because you probably should have some issues when you come home because we're not built for this. I always say that America is not, we're well-armed lambs sitting at a dinner table full of lions. And as long as we have our arms, those lions can't eat us. But also, I look at post-traumatic stress as the epitome of what America is. We're not a warrior society. We're not trying to go out and wage war on everyone. We're not trying to go and kill all these nations. But if we must, we're going to send our best, the best men and women we have in this country, to go and fight for our country, fight for our rights and the rights that we have for all the nations that we protect. And then those men and women have basically, whether they come home alive or not, they've sacrificed their lives for America, because they're never going to be the same. They're never going to be treated the same. And now they will mourn the things that they had to do in combat for the rest of their lives. That's true democracy. That's not warrior. That is what we were built upon, and that's what we should always continue to be, is we're not trying to wage war. We're not trying to be a warrior society. We are a superpower, and we will protect the people and the things that we love. But we're going to have to sacrifice the best that we have to do it. This is one of the only nations in the world where 1% of the population protects 99%. Usually, if you go to these other communist countries, you've got 99% protecting the 1%. Here, you've got 1% of our community standing up and saying, you don't have to bear this. You don't have to go over and do this. I'll do it. Where else do you get that, man? You don't get it anywhere but here. So
you made a ton of points in there. The first thing that I want to address is it really shouldn't be called post-traumatic stress disorder. It should be something like post-traumatic stress effect.
Yeah.
Like, it's the effect of when you go through a traumatic situation of stress. You should have to work through that. There
Right.
will be lingering effects. If you have a conscience, if
Exactly.
you have any type of morality or standard, you're going to question the actions that you have to do in war.
Right.
That's normal.
And it's not even like going over there and killing people. I mean, just going over there and seeing the children. If you have a heart in your body and you see these kids in these countries that are just digging through trash for food, begging you for food, mister, please give me some food, please give me anything, you're going to come home affected. I'm not saying that you have to go over there and kill a bunch of people to come home with issues. You can go over there and just see. This is the first time some of these men and women have ever left the United States of America. It was for me. The first time I ever left the USA, I went to Kuwait. And then from Kuwait, I go into Iraq, and Iraq was just, they don't show you on TV how horrible these cities outside of Baghdad are. Baghdad looks beautiful in some of these pictures, but when you get into Al-Hai or Nasiriyah or Tikrit and some of these places where it's just real poverty that you've never seen in America, man, it changes you.
And that's the thing that you're talking about is like the kids in this generation and the kids in the culture right now. I mean, they're the proof of the flow chart that we say like strong or great men create
good times.
Yeah. Strong men create good times.
Yeah.
Good times create soft men. Soft men create hard times.
Exactly.
Etc. What we're witnessing is we have a society of kids that do have these advantages in life,
right.
Privileges, whatever word you'd like to call it, and naturally that softens you. You're not as calloused. You're not as hardened by the world. You don't know the horrors of what's out there. The first time I went to China, it was an incredible experience. When I went to Sanya on the southern tip of China, which is like we stayed in like a 7-star hotel.
Right.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I went to China 5 times. The other 4 times, I went to the border of Mongolia where there's like organ trafficking.
Yeah.
Where like they'll kidnap you and keep you alive and cut your organs out and give them to people. And I saw the way that the children were living, exactly what you were speaking. We stopped in a rural town on the way to the fights that were in the middle of the desert in China. The conditions that the people lived in were so subhuman that it's hard to believe that there are countless people around the world living in those situations.
Man, I watched a 6-year-old take apart a Kalashnikov AK and put it back together quicker than I could as a team leader in LAR. And, every day that I look at my 5-year-old and I think about, how good he has it, and then I think about, I still think about that. See, I wonder where he's at. I wonder if he went on to fight for the Taliban. Did he get killed? I have an interpreter that we left over there. These are all things that you take with you. There'll always be moments in your life where you stop and think back of over there, or you stop and think about, man, I wonder where this person is, or I wonder if they made it out, or I wonder if this kid made it. So,
and you really can't blame either kid. It's like you can't blame the kid that's in a war-torn country that is growing up in that world, that's his viewpoint. In his eyes, he is fighting for his people and his country. Like he might have as much conviction to cause as you do.
More.
More.
And that's the crazy thing. So, and I'll take it a step further. In Iraq, I didn't hold a grudge towards any of the Iraq army. They were fighting for their country. Their president, Saddam Hussein, had told them that they had to fight. And then most of the time when we would start into villages, they would just give up and be like, look, we don't want to do this either. We know this is not right.
And what if they're just defending the person next to them the same way that you are? They want to take care of the people.
Well, it's so wild, man. In Iraq, Saddam was telling, because they were starving to death. Like these people were starving to death once we had invaded. Because I don't know if nobody's probably seen this, but Iraq, when we invaded, was a superpower in the Middle East. Iran was scared to death of Iraq. They wouldn't do anything. Saddam had gassed Iran. Like, he didn't give a shit. So for us, when people saw America and basically just England go in together and just walk through, and that we did. The first 4 months of the Iraq army, our military, if you go back, I was in Tikrit in like 4 months. Tikrit's the farthest northern border to Syria. I went from Kuwait to Tikrit in 4 months. They started calling my unit Matadada, which means the Great Destroyers. Because if we came to your village and you shot at us, you didn't have a village anymore. Like, that's no shit. So
we called one thing the shock and awe campaign. I remember watching that on the news.
Dude, it was the, and this is still the state. So what we did was called the Blue Diamond. The army went through Basra, we went through Nasiriyah, and we converged on Baghdad together. But it was also the fastest air-ground movement that had ever. Rumsfeld, I'll say this for him, designed a beautiful plan where it was they would hit what they were used to in Desert Storm was we had just hit them with air and artillery for days and days and days. And so they could just go underground or go in their bunkers, and then they would wait for the shelling, and then they would come back out. Well, what we did in the invasion was we would hit them with air, they would go in, and then by the time they came out, our ground was already there. So it was air, ground, air, ground, air, ground, all the way to Baghdad, and they'd never seen anything like that. The world had never seen anything like that. I can't ever watch fireworks on the 4th of July thing because they ain't got shit to what I saw over there. Like just watching the Cobras and the LAVs and the Abrams and everything come together. Seriously, in that invasion of Iraq campaign, the world saw just what we could do if we just flexed a little bit. That wasn't even a third. If you think the invasion to Iraq was, oh man, America, that wasn't a third of what we could have done. If we had really gotten to a sticky situation, we would have brought out shit the world has never seen.
Remember in Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor happened, and we dropped 2 atomic bombs and leveled cities.
Yeah, and that was World War II. What do you think we got now?
That's what I'm saying. In World War II, we absolutely leveled 2 cities that were in opposition.
Before America would ever fall to anyone, the world would end. Let's just put it that way. Like, the world would end. Like, we probably could blow the whole world up.
That's probably the case with most superpowers. Like, even poking at Russia the way NATO is and all the things that are happening right now, like, that's a sticky situation.
I don't agree with that a little bit, because even Putin has said there's really only one superpower now. When Russia was the Soviet Union, they could maybe have been a comparison. But when they broke down to being just Russia, and like he's trying to, in the end of his, trying to put back this, that's why the Ukraine thing's about, he wants to put the Soviet Union back together.
You don't think China is a superpower just on population alone?
So you just said, when you were talking about China, and you were talking about going to Mongolia and the organ trafficking, and like if you look at Hong Kong and Taiwan and a lot of the major cities in China, they look like they're on par with what we have here in America. But when you start getting out in those lower lights, they're not. And so it shows that they if you can't feed your people, and I'm not saying we do an amazing, but we do a lot better of a job than Russia or China does at taking care of our people. You're not going to go into a city, I don't care, downtown Detroit, downtown Baltimore, some of the worst cities in America. You're not going to go into those cities and it be like you said on the tip of Mongolia. So
yeah, no, I've never seen anything like it here.
With you're talking about their population too, is that they have the 1 million man army, but they can't arm the whole army. So what they do is they fight in line units. The first 3 lines have weapons. The rest of those poor suckers are just waiting to pick up the weapon from the dead dude in front of them. So guess what? An 18-year-old with a chain gun in a bunker could take out half of a damn unit that China's going to put forward. All you got to do is it's called Z patterns, folks. You just do a Z pattern, and everything in that Z hits a wall of lead and dies. So after I saw
the idea of a fair fight too, when you said that earlier with the Geneva rules and things like that, there isn't a fair fight at the bar, but we're going to go into another country and have to follow rules when bullets are coming at you. Like that is such an idiotic thing for my brain to try to grasp.
And the Allies are the only ones that fight by these rules. Like whenever you say like the axis of evil or whoever the opposition is of America and England, usually they don't. If we can't make them mind, what's the UN going to do? Like
why would they follow your rules too?
We are the UN. Like if the UN needs muscle, who's going to give it? South Africa? No, it's going to be us in England that have to fit the majority of that bill. It's going to still be American boys and girls, British boys and girls. They're the majority of the UN. So if they're not scared of the UN, they're not going to be scared. If they're not scared of us, they're not going to be scared of the UN. If you're fighting America, who the hell is the UN to you? Like you're not going. And after I'll say this, and I
feel
think
like the Vietnam War was supposed to teach us that too, because everyone always talks about their hands were so tied, and like we could have made a difference in Vietnam, but look how long Vietnam dragged on. It was like a complete failure because of rules of engagement and things like that.
I have buddies that fought in Vietnam. One of them's a great songwriter who's a part of Stop 22 organization. His name's Sam Tate. He was a forward observer in Vietnam, which he called in air basically and he would tell me that they would have like down days. And down days where like it'd be like we're not operating today. And he said you could see the Viet Cong like walking into position and be like, well, they're right there. All we got to do, and they'd be like, no, we can't attack them today. It's like an operational day. And he'd be like, would anybody tell them because they're going into position to kill us tomorrow? Well, I mean, that's the politics of the game. Whenever you take politics and put it into anything, it's just jackasseries. It's like. Even like us talking about the invasion to Iraq, the first 4 months, the leashes were off. If you ever want to see what the Marine Corps could look like if they just said, get them, that's the first 4 months of Iraq. And then we started seeing the bullshit start coming in, the politics. And it turned into 12 years because of the politics, not because of the ability of our military. Our military could have taken, handled, and had Iraq in a bow in a year tops. A year. And I'm talking about ISIS under control, everything, a year tops. But when you start bringing in these SOPs where it's like now you got to shoot at the ground, then you got to shoot and this is if a vehicle is charging you that's about to blow up your whole unit, you got to shoot at the ground, then you got to shoot the bumper, you got to yell all these Arabic words, and then you can engage the hood. Well, if you're engaging the hood, he's close enough that when he detonates, you're dead. And everybody that's behind you is going to take shrapnel. I mean, we had a Suburban that was packed with so much explosives that hit our boys in like 2004 that were in Iraq, that it went through a checkpoint and it blew up. They found the engine block half a mile down the road.
Why would any sane people listen to things like this? Why would your military leadership know that they're going to get countless people like you killed? Way more, those deaths are going to be on their hands, and they're going to enforce these rules. Why would sane people do this?
Because what happens is that when you have change of leadership at the top, they start putting people in positions of leadership that don't give a shit about that. And there is a motto among Marines, which is inbred in all Marines, which is mission completion becomes before all else. So that means your life, anything else. We have to complete this mission. And if I've got to die to complete this mission, then that's what I got to do because I joined here. And USMC stands for you signed the motherfucking contract. So
what if I said the only way that I'm going to let you complete this mission is when you've had a 95% casualty rate trying to take over the country, then you're allowed to take all the chains off and rules off. Now you're allowed to get the mission done. And at the very end, there's 3% of you left standing. And you guys, hey guys, mission complete is more important than anything else. You had to hit that casualty limit first. That's ridiculous. That's absurd.
This dude right here would still be walking this earth if it wasn't for mission completion. I can almost swear upon that because I know that when we got the mission down to go on the night mission that he died on, we could not complete the mission. We knew somebody was going to die. Somebody was going to die. We thought in fact, we were trying to call back because we have a commander in the BLT, which is a base landing team, and that's who the Marines answer to. He has a commander on the ship, which is the naval commander, and he is who the BLT commander is supposed to listen to. Our BLT commander stopped listening to this guy. He wouldn't even take his calls. He just went on he started calling himself Genghis Khan.
I would expect the breakdowns of communication. Like I would not allow my people to die if I could make a difference.
I'll tell you how bad it was. The guy we had to take orders from, after I was injured and on my way back, he was on the cover of the Marine Corps Times, and it said, "You're fired." They had fired him for the shit that he had done in Afghanistan. The night that Ron died, we were trying to call ship to get them to cancel the mission because we knew that we could not complete this mission without casualties. And matter of fact, I've heard from several of the upper echelon that was there with the colonel that night that he had said that we were all dead and that he wasn't sending out. I mean, we fought all night out there. We had to get Ron's body. We had to find our corpsman. By the time that Ron was out on a 5-man recon patrol, and we were in the back as what's called QRF, Quick Reaction Forces, which is we were only 8 clicks, which is 8,000 meters from them when he got ambushed. They got ambushed 26 on 5. 26 on, they had the high ground. 26 with RPKs. Ron and them walked right into the LPOP, and the dude stood up, and Ron tried to tell him, like, we're Marines. I don't think you want to do this. And the dude shot our staff sergeant in the groin with an AK. Ron hit him twice with a shotgun, and then the whole hillside just opened up on fire. They were waiting an ambush for him. And so they fought until we got there. Ron had already been killed. He sacrificed his life to save our injured staff sergeant, and our corpsman had been hit with shrapnel. So he basically pulled fire and sacrificed his life to save the rest of them. And by the time we got there, Ron had already been killed. Our staff sergeant was about to go. Our corpsman had actually, which that's the thing about the Geneva Convention, our corpsmen are not taught to be combatants. Our Navy corpsmen are called non-combatants. They're there to aid us if we're injured and even aid the enemy after they fix us if they're injured. But when you're fighting a country that doesn't live up to Geneva, they use those crosses that are as target practice. So they're shooting at our corpsman. They're trying to kill him. Our corpsman took one of our other Marines that was injured, threw him on his shoulder. You want to talk about a stud, and then broke contact and ran 8 clicks back to where he thought we were at to get that Marine help. And he didn't even know he was hit with shrapnel. This is after he had worked on Ron and figured out that Ron was KIA and couldn't get to him, and he couldn't get to our staff sergeant, who he also had thought was KIA. So our other corpsman had worked, saved our staff sergeant alive. We took the hillside. But once we got the hillside, now we've got the village down below. And we've only got, I think we had 4 vehicles, and that's like 12 scouts, and out of these 12 scouts, we got to figure out who's going to hold the hill. The vehicles are, this is something that an entire infantry unit or battalion should be doing, not a platoon. And when I talk about a platoon, I'm not talking about a platoon of infantry. I'm talking about a platoon of LAR, which we're not set up for this. And so we put together like a little super squad of team leaders. It was just all team leaders on a scout team, and we went into the village looking for Doc because we couldn't get comms with him. And so we should have had 1-6 should have been there to take over from us, but we had to fight all night. We had to look all night. We had to work on our corpsmen, and the next morning, they came in. And I heard specifically from the sergeant major that he was told to stand down from the colonel because we were all dead and he wasn't going to get any more Marines killed that night. So this is who we're taking orders from. This dipshit got one of the greatest Marines that's ever lived killed because his ego told him. We had killed and captured more Taliban in 3 months than anyone had in 3 years up to that point. But this piece of shit said, if no one dies, they're not going to believe that we've seen this much combat. This is what this arrogant piece of shit that was put in charge of Marines says. And then he was fired from the Marine Corps. So, you know, that shit right there to me is traitorous. Like, he shouldn't have been fired. He should have been put in jail somewhere. And, you know, there's a lot of Marines out there that's going to hear this that love this guy. They worship him. If you were in 1-6, they love Colonel Khan. Like, they love the guy. And you know, that's their, you know, we all have different opinions. I know what I went through with him. And I know that Corporal Ron Payne would still be alive today if it wasn't for him and his missions and his orders. You know, so, yeah, I don't miss the circus, but I damn sure do miss the clowns. And, you know, Ron is missed, and I know that he would have been a great man, a great fixture of our society if he could have still been here today. But like he told his mom and dad, he'd already talked to God. That was his mission. We can't stop that. And so I'm just thankful men like him lived.
So let's talk about when you had to close the chapter of the military. You come back home. You've experienced things like this. You're over there. You went in with passion. You threw your life in a whole different direction. All of a sudden, it's life or death. It's fight or flight. It's growing up in the world so fast versus being the young guy who was playing music for some girls and trying to figure out what you wanted to do. Like, all of a sudden, you became, you know, a different human being. The Stephen that came back was not the Stephen that left. Oh, no. When you came back, what does that period of your life look like? You know, did you stumble right upon impact home? Yeah. Did you go into dark times? Did you fall into any drugs or anything? And then how did you get back to music?
Well, it's funny you say stumble because, you know, on one of the last missions we had was convoy security out of Afghanistan. We were taking everybody kind of out. My vehicle we were in line, so we were going around the squad we were leaving out, and the dust was just horrible. Where they had been plowing to try to find landmines because right outside of Kandahar is really heavily mined. And so they had a lot of different things out. They were searching for landmines, and they were digging landmines up and stuff like that. And I guess they had dug like an anti-tank mine up, which is a little bigger, and it left a big crater where they had dug it up. Well, my vehicle didn't see it in the dirt, and we hit that, and it catapulted me up and off of what's called a scout hatch on the back of the LAV. And then I slammed back down on what's called the bustle rack. So it's just a rack, a steel bar. And my back hit, and it just broke L1 to L5 and shattered all my lumbars. And I just slid back into the scout hatch. My guys start trying to pull me out and work on me. And, you know, I don't remember a lot of that. The next, like, 6 to 9 months is just kind of a blur. I went from there to, they flew me from Kandahar to Kabul, from Kabul to Germany. And then from Germany, I stayed there like a month. And then they flew me into Bethesda, Maryland, where I went to the Naval Hospital. And I stayed there for like 2 months, 3 months before they had figured out what they were really going to do with me. Luckily, I'm seriously luckily, my mother was a smoker at the time, and she was down in a smoking pit, and she was kind of telling this lady how my injury had happened and what had happened to me. And so they were planning on just fusing my back and putting me in a wheelchair. You know, that's what they had seen for a young man, I guess. And this lady had worked for VA Research and Development, and she was like, you know, they've got this surgery called a kyphoplasty. They're used on elderly veterans with degenerative discs. If he doesn't have a spinal injury, it just seems like this would work. Maybe you could ask the doctors. So my mom called my first sergeant. My first sergeant, Lee, was a great guy. Is a great guy still this day. And between him and my mother, they just battered these naval doctors on, you know, we want this and we want him to walk again. And, you know, I even remember, like, sometimes my first sergeant would call, and you got to realize these doctors are colonels and high-ranking naval, you know, officers. And my first sergeant's just he's an infantry dog, first sergeant of infantry. Since he was a lance corporal, he's been infantry. That's all he knows. He don't know, sir, good morning, sir. This is first sergeant. He's like, what's up, motherfucker? This Marine is a great Marine, and we want him walking again. And he just kept harassing these doctors to the point where they'd just be like, is that First Sergeant Lee? I don't want to talk to him. First Sergeant James, I don't want to talk to him. So, yeah, it took First Sergeant James and my mom to really get them to finally be like, because the people don't realize the DOD and the VA don't work together. Like, the DOD could be working on something medically, and the VA could be working on the same thing, and they don't share their findings. Yet we as taxpayers they're double dipping our money to work, but they're like, well, you know, if you're a member of the Department of Defense, you're not the same thing as a veteran, so we can't really share those with you, because once you come over to the veteran side, then we can handle you. Man, that's bullshit. Like, if we're working on something and it means military personnel, it should all be involved. And so I was one of the first VA DOD collaborations in a long time. They actually turned me over to the VA to do the kyphoplasty. And
this is the difference between you never walking again and being in a wheelchair. Because, like, you're a healthy guy. You walked right in here. You move around. You had your singing career. Right. It's like if someone hadn't advocated on your behalf, if your mom hadn't gone and was smoking a cigarette around the right person, you could have spent the rest of your life in a wheelchair.
Yes, and kids don't smoke. That's not an advertisement for smoking. But, yeah, definitely, man. And the thing is, bro, I have seen people that have less injuries than I did with their back, who are in a wheelchair. I was playing for the Semper Fi Fund. There was a Marine there who'd broke like L3, L4, and some lumbars, and he was in a wheelchair, and he had gotten blood clots during my performance, and they had rushed him in the bathroom to work on him. And I'm like looking, I was like, what happened to his injury? And they tell me, and I was like, I broke L1, you know, it's hard for my mind to process that it was that close, that I too could have possibly had that, you know, and they would never tell me, like, you're never going to walk again. They'd just be like, we don't see you walking without pain ever again. We don't, you know, these things that they put, you know, they try to use to make you feel better. But yeah, if I hadn't have gotten the surgery, I know for a fact I wouldn't walk like I do today. Like, I know, I've seen other people do it. So it was that close for me to have, you know, to have just been maybe destined to a wheelchair or even a walker for the rest of my life, or definitely a cane. And so I know I'm blessed, man. And, you know, I've always said that I'm hard-headed. God made me. When God gives you the gift of writing songs or writing poems or writing anything that may be used in a grand scale to help people, get ready, man, because you're gonna go through some shit. Because I think Dave Matthews said it best. He said somebody's heart gets broken and it becomes your favorite song. Because if you're a true songwriter, you write songs you've lived. You write songs that you feel, because you know you can pass that on. And when it goes on the radio, whether you sing it or somebody else sings it, all those listeners that hear it are going to feel that, and then they're going to find their own meaning for it. Because anything that comes from pain, when you write it out, we're all going through pain in some way. You're going to find your meaning for that song. It may not be the meaning that the dude wrote it with, but you're going to find your meaning. And so I knew then when I had started using, and I started using music in the Marine Corps, like all my guys knew that, like, when he gets out, he's going, because we used to watch the CMA Awards together and stuff, and they'd be like, man, we're going to see you on there in like 7 years. And, you know, I was writing songs. I even joked about when I was in Afghanistan, one of our lieutenants was joking because I'd written this song, or I'd cut this song that a buddy of mine wrote called Love Her Like a River. And I'd be on the back of the vehicle singing, love her like a river. And he'd be like, dude, I don't see any rivers around here. You need to write a song called Love Her Like a Wadi or something like that. And so he actually called me a few years ago. Man, I heard all these songs. I never heard Love Her Like a Wadi on the radio. So I knew that if I'm going to be a songwriter and I'm going to try to write these songs to help people heal by, God knows I'm a little bit stupid, and I got to go through these things to understand what I'm writing about. And so I feel like everything I've been through in life, man, has just set me up to write a song to help somebody else not go through that shit the same way that I did. And so that's what I use it for. I've always used it as my own therapy, but I also look at it like this. I'm not special. Like, I'm not a special dude. I'm a Marine like a million other Marines. I'm a veteran like, 40 other million veterans. And if I'm going through something, somebody else probably is too. And if I'm not special and I can convince myself that, I'm just one person who knows how to use this and this to put what we're all going through in a melody that we can live by now. Like, I'm going to make our own anthem, basically. Here's an anthem for us to remember and get through shit. And also to tell you that if I can make it, if I'm telling you I'm not special and I'm just another 0311, if I can make it, you can make it. And then my other motto is, I'm not going to do anything to myself, because I'm not going to let the Taliban ever beat me, like ever. I'm going to live to 90 just so that the last dude I fought in Afghanistan dies before me. Like, you're not going to get me here. If I could fight through Afghanistan to get back home, I'm sure as hell not going to leave home again. So I just ask anybody that's listening to this podcast, man, if you're a veteran, you're going through something, get a piece of paper, get a pen. You don't have to be the greatest songwriter. You don't have to be the greatest poet in the world. Start writing that shit down because you got to get it out. If he stays inside, it's going to fester and it's going to turn into something bigger. You keep taking all these pills that you're prescribed, it makes it easier. You know, when your ambitions are gone and your conscience has been muted by these handfuls of medication that we're being given, it's going to make it easier. It's going to make it easier to do what you think you need to do, which is not something that anybody wants you to do. Like it's easy to convince yourself that the world's better without you. The hard part is convincing yourself that it's not better without you, and that's where you got to live.
So you recover from this injury. Music was still kind of on the brain. You've witnessed your dad go to Nashville and take a real shot at his career. How do you really start putting the pieces in line so that you're like, because I know you went on tour, you had a couple big hits.
Oh, yeah.
How does that all start to come to fruition?
So that was the thing, you know, the whole time I was in the Marine Corps before I was injured, I was getting calls from record labels all the time. Like they had known from my developmental deal before I joined the Marine Corps that I was there. And
so you were already getting offers.
Right,
you didn't have to come and search for them.
They saw money in it. I mean, because the thing is there's really no other patriotic music genre like country music. And they just saw like, oh, we're going to have the first combat veteran plus, you know, the son of Steve Cochran come out and play these songs for us. But once I got injured, things changed a little bit. You know, once the stigma of post-traumatic stress started getting spread around, things change a lot because you know these record labels have to insure you. They have to insure your voice. They have to insure your there's not a lot of insurance in the early days for somebody that's got post-traumatic stress disorder and you know and also had an experimental surgery to learn to walk again. So you know there was 9 months of therapy where you know I was learning just to walk without a walker, without a cane. You know, for a long time, I couldn't feel from my knee down because the nerves where I tore my sciatic nerve too, it hadn't really regenerated. So there was times where I was just throwing my leg out and hoping that it caught something. I couldn't. It was like a ghost leg. And so those are the days that nobody really saw. Like those were the hard days where I had that dream and I was going to make it. Like you're not calling me, but I promise you're going to wish you had. And I just kept working and working and working. And I was taking my military money that I'd gotten from being injured, called the TSGLI, and I was recording music on my own and setting up shows with John Rich from Big and Rich had a group called the Music Mafia. And he was letting me play shows to open for them. Even if I had to sit on a stool, he was letting me do these shows. And that really helped me get in front of a lot of people. And then he was even the one that was like, look, man, you need to go start your own night because you're so good at hosting and you're so good at speaking. So we started a thing called the La Familia, means the family. And I had my own group of artists that we were having our own night. Wednesday nights we'd play these shows. And from there, we were playing on this little road that nobody knew at the time. Like it was kind of like if you were a big deal or you thought you were a big deal, you played on Broadway, right? But I learned to break things down a little bit in the Marine Corps where I could sit back and take myself out of it and look at what's going on and then figure out a game plan, almost like chess, you know? And so I looked at Broadway and I started looking at the numbers and I'm thinking, you know, they're getting a lot of attention down there, but they're playing cover songs, not their own music. They got to sound like these people that they're playing. Like nobody wants to hear Jason Aldean sing Johnny Cash when he was just Jason on Broadway. They want to hear Jason Aldean sound like Johnny Cash while he's playing on Broadway. So they're losing who they are. They're not getting to showcase their own songs. Yeah, they're getting to play for thousands of people a night and they're making great tips, but they're not going to get a record deal there. And that was my goal. My goal was not just to play music for a lot of people. My goal was to prove that I could go from not walking to being just as good as anybody on the radio. And so I saw Demumbrian, which was close to 16th Avenue, which is where all the record labels are at. So I started seeing all these record label people, when they would get off work, they wouldn't go to Broadway and drink. They're certainly not going to go hang out with a bunch of fans who might know them. They're going to Demumbrian where no tourists are at. This is just all local people that knew about Demumbrian at the time. Like Tin Roof wasn't even a thing on that road yet. And anybody from Nashville knows that Tin Roof is big and Demumbrian's a huge road now for a lot of music. But back then it wasn't. We had like 2 bars. We had Dan McGinnis and On the Rocks. And so we set up in On the Rocks and we just play these shows there. And back then it was hard to get people to even come into bars on Demumbrian. And so we would have people stand out on the sidewalk, big veterans. And when people walked on the sidewalk, they would grab them and throw them in the bar and be like, go listen. And that's how we would start packing. Wednesday nights under Mumbrian were impossible. And I told the dude, I was like, I'll pack this every Wednesday night. And we did. We were packing the place every Wednesday night until, we had a few record labels come in and started talking. My producer was Jim Allison. He produced Achy Breaky Heart for Billy Ray Cyrus, and he found Billy Ray, and he produced Reba McEntire and all these other big artists. He was my dad's producer. And so Jim had met with this investor lady out of Louisiana, and she was wanting to buy his record label that he had from a Opry member named shoot, I can't remember that right now. Think of it later. But he had bought it from him, and so he sold it to this lady, and she was really just using it to try to launch her niece. And so she came out to one of our shows on a Wednesday, and we just, we threw everything at the kitchen sink with her and just showed her what we could do. And it went from, well, now I'm going to focus on you, and we're going to assign you this record label. And we took off the smallest record label in Nashville. They were like, he'll never chart a song, much less have what's called a hit. And anything but from top 60 to a number 1 is considered a hit in country music. If you're 59, there's only 58 other people that's above you. And when you think 1,000 people a day are getting off the bus in Nashville to live this dream, that's like being the 58th best baseball player in the world. That's pretty awesome. 58th best basketball player in the world. Pretty good. So people don't think of music as like that, but I always did. Like being a artist that's on the radio that's charted in the top 60, that's like being in the NBA. That's like being in the MLB. That's like being in the UFC. It's you're at the top. You're top 1%. And we did it 3 times. So we were really hitting on all cylinders and trying to make this thing work. And the business creeps in, man. I told you a long time ago, I really believe music was made by God. He gave it to us to heal. We can even trace things back that everything has a vibration. Everything has, in this world is built on the vibration, the string theory or whatever they might say. And then I really think that the devil created the damn music business, because if creative people and business people go into relationships together, creative people are going to lose every time. These are your babies. I wrote this song of some shit I went through. Like, this is a part of my life. And I may have wrote this song thinking I'm going to get Garth Brooks or I'm going to get Jason Aldean to cut this. And then you get with a business, they're like, no, we got this other person. It's going to make it more famous and it's going to be bigger. They don't really understand what the song's about, but they want to put it on their album and release it. And you're like, but that's not who I wrote it for. They're like, I don't care. We're here to make money. Like, pitch your song out there and get some damn money coming in. And you're like, but this is not do you want to make it in this business, or do you want to save lives? That's some shit that's really been said. Like, do you want to make, another good one was, well, I didn't know you wanted to be a millionaire. If you'd told me you want to be a millionaire, I'd have made you a millionaire. But you told me you wanted to live your dream. Well, shit, I didn't know I had to be broke too. Like, I thought, if you get a new Lincoln, why can't I have one? So it's you've heard, if anybody's watched the Rogan podcast with Jelly Roll, he talked about the state of the music business, and it's, there's people out there with 90-10 contracts where the label takes 90. There's things called 360 contracts, which is kind of what I was in a part of, which is like means that if you do anything, whether it be music, whether you're a spokesman, you write a book, you're an actor, that record label gets a piece of everything you do. And then they put these little clauses in there where even if, so say we break up and I want to go to this record label, it's going to sign me. Well, they have a clause in my contract that if this record label offers me $50,000, they get the chance to match it before I can go there. So they own you. Because the thing is they can say, we're going to give you $55,000 to re-sign, or we're going to give you $1 million to re-sign. But what they really mean is, we're going to give you $1 million on paper, and then we're going to buy a bunch of shit and make you pay it off. Because you're always paying. Like, you could be like, man, these 12-passenger vans, we're touring like, we got 87 dates in the next 6 months, and we're in a 12-passenger van with 7 pickers, and it's really cramped, and we're staying in these shitty hotels. Like, we need a bus. You might just say, like, man, I can't wait till we get to a bus. Record label like, oh, we'll get you a bus. You want a bus? We'll get you a bus. And then you get the bus, and you're like, oh, this is so much better. And then you get your paycheck, and you're like, why is my band making more money than I? Oh, you're paying your bus off. You want your bus? But you're like, well, but the bus payment's $500 a month, and I'm paying you $3,000 a month. And you're like, oh, yeah, because we got to get insurance. And then they'll do a good one with you. They'll start telling you this bus that you're helping pay off, the insurance says who's allowed to be on the bus. It's like you have like I had a girlfriend at the time, and I wanted to take her out with me, and they're like, no, she can't get on the bus. She's not covered by the insurance, bro. Like this is where they think that you're just super stupid. Like you're just super stupid, and so you start realizing at the time, like, oh, they signed me because they think I'm dumb and they can take advantage of me. That's what really happens. And so it's...
I mean, anyone that's running a business, that's an expense to their business, too. They're writing those expenses off. They're writing all those expenses off. They're just trying to suck as much from the creative person as possible and keep probably maximum control.
Bro, it got so bad. There was things that I didn't even understand until after I got out. Like a shoe was thrown across the room one time. And I was just walking through the studio, and this person was like, hey, will you pick that shoe up for me? And I picked it up and brought it back, and she looked around and was like, see, I told you I could make him bring me my shoes. Like to other investors. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, hold on. I just fought 2 wars. And this is the way you think you're going to treat me? So a lot of that stuff started happening. And then I had some, as I got bigger, I started having more voices around me that were just like, that had been in the music business for a long time. The head of my security is like a father figure to me, and he runs one of the largest artist security companies. He was the security for Toby Keith. He was the security for Luke Bryan. He was their head of security, and he was the one that was just like, dude, this is not the way shit works. Like, do you understand what is happening here? Like, you're being treated like you're owned. Not like you're the one that's running this. Like there would not be a record label if you weren't on it, because she'd signed other people underneath me after we had, had the success on radio. She'd signed a few other people, and it was almost like we were sacrificing a lot of my success to help bring them up. And it was almost like, well, because they were from her hometown, that she wanted to be like, okay, well, this Kentucky boy's, we used him up now. Look at all these Louisiana people we got. And my security guy was just like, this is some bullshit, man. Like, you're the dude. They're not treating Craig Morgan like this at Broken Bow. They're not, and they eventually did. But at the time, Craig was the guy over there, and then they found Jason Aldean. So it's like.
Now, is this the standard across the music industry with most record labels operating this way? Because, I mean, if you look at things like the UFC or any major organization, it tends to be like the players do bring the value. Without the players, there's no show. Without the fighters, there's no show. Without the musicians, there's no way to make the money.
Right.
But at the end of the day, all the power resides in the entities that know how to pull the right strings. Because if they can't get you on the radio, if you can't get yourself on the radio, no matter how great of a singer you are, if you can't get your voice and message out there because you are blocked by these people if you won't play their game, how do you do it?
Well, it's not a lot different than the UFC, to be honest with you. If you look at it, look at the arguments about fighters' pay, and then Dana's like, look, you ain't got to fight here. But you're like, I kind of do. If I want to be noticed, let's go back to Kobe. Look, they were about to cut Kobe Covington, but he had to like reinvent himself and be this person that he's not just to get seen and to be value to the UFC, right? And I love UFC. I'm not knocking anything they do. That's their business model to have. But it's the same thing for these record labels. They're looking at it like, okay, you've got a good voice. But guess what? At this level, when everybody, it's just like everybody can fight at that level. Like they're not going to go lose to somebody that's not that level. Everybody at this level, they can write, they can sing, they can play. Now what's your story? That's what sets you aside. If you don't have a good story.
And maybe that's the problem. Unfortunately, there's enough people that if you won't take the deal that they're offering, they'll get someone else that will. That's what happens with the fighters.
Dude, that's the same
deal.
The
UFC is the pinnacle. And it's like, if you at all buck the system or won't play the game the way that they want you to play it, then go, and we'll just get someone else that will.
That's exactly right. And that's how they'll tell you that, too. You're not special. There's 1,000 people that just got off the bus this morning. And the truth is, if you go to Nashville, Tennessee, and you go to any restaurant, your server is probably more talented than 90% of people you've heard on the radio. Like, I'm not even John Rich had said that at events. He goes, ladies and gentlemen, the greatest musicians here tonight are probably serving you, but you're not going to hear them tonight because they don't have a record deal. We do. So this is who you're going to. And it was kind of a joke, but it's the truth as well. There's a lot of truth in that. There are people that are serving cheeseburgers right now in Nashville that could write a song better than anything you've heard, and probably has the song that could be the #1 song in the nation. You'll never hear it because they're not playing the game.
So then how does someone become like a Taylor Swift, a woman that, like, I mean, the reason I'm using her as an example is people were paying thousands and thousands of dollars
I'm about to make some fans here.
For her tickets. It just happened at Ford Field. I had a cousin that lives in another state. Like, I need to get tickets, and I will spend almost like what do I got to pay to be able to be at her event? How does someone get to that level without playing the game the way that they wanted her to?
Oh, she played the game. Here's the thing about Taylor. Oh, man, I'm going to piss a lot of people off here.
As long as that's the truth as your perspective, it is what it is.
Not a Taylor fan. I'm a fan of the business that Taylor played and a lot of her songwriting ability. I won't take that away from her. She writes probably to her fan base better than any songwriter out there.
But she writes all of her own music. No one assists her.
That's not true either. Like, she has a lot of co-writers and a lot of great co-writers. If people want to go Google Taylor Swift songs, go Google her big hits, and you'll start pulling out some of these very big songwriters who've written Britney hits, and they're written. These are people that are like, nobody knew who Sia was for the longest time, and but she had written Rihanna, Britney. Like, she had the only reason we know Sia is because she had sent that demo to Rihanna, her first big song, I Put My Arms Around. So she had sent that demo, and Rihanna or Beyonce, one of them, had thought that it sounded too much like Umbrellas. She wrote Umbrellas for Rihanna. And so that demo got leaked out of Sia singing. Or we'd never know who Sia was. She's just a songwriter. That's why she has stage fright. That's why she'll leave her hair in front of her face, because she would never wanted to be an artist. It was just, it kind of happened naturally for her, which happens with a lot. You know, Chris Stapleton was in a bluegrass band for a long time called the Steel Drivers, but he wrote so many hits in country music. He really just didn't have the ambition to go do that until he saw that, you know, hey man, I can make these songs just as big as anybody else. So with Taylor, Taylor's family's from New Jersey. They moved to Nashville with an agenda. The agenda was, we're making our child a star.
And they're like a very affluent family something like that.
They're very, very
I would
wealthy.
imagine you would need to throw money around, because otherwise you're just going to get into the mix.
We wouldn't know Taylor Swift if it wasn't for her dad. Her dad was putting money into the record label that signed her to keep the record label afloat because it was going under. You know, there's so many pieces to this. Like, the record label that Taylor Swift broke on in country music kind of used to be owned with Toby Keith, and then they split, and one went Show Dog and one went the other. And then this record label that Taylor was on was going under. Her dad was giving them money to keep them afloat, just because they knew that at the time they couldn't get her a record deal anywhere else. She was horrible. Like, anybody wants to, go Google Permanent Marker Jamboree in the Hills. I was there for the sound check of that, and it is bad. It's bad. And I mean, like, and I'm one that thinks that Taylor in pop is way better than she was in country. Again, I'm not saying you got to be the greatest singer or the greatest songwriter to be in country. Lord knows I'm not. But I know that that wasn't great either, and yet it was still being propped up as, you know, this is the greatest thing. She's writing these. It's going to be great. She's going to be amazing. She's going to be big, and it just. I watched it happen, and it was weird to me, because it was like, up to that point, again, like I said, you had the creatives and you had the business people. But I was watching them do something, man. I was watching them take a business person and make them a creative. And that's dangerous. That's like taking a human and making it cyborg, because she understood the business, because her parents were helping her teach her the business. She had a lot of great people around her teaching the business.
So she almost understood what she had to become, even though she wasn't it initially. She wasn't the creative. She wasn't the person that just has natural talent.
She knew she was the company. She's the corporation, and like, her family had made sure that, like, this is our.
We have to build this brand, image, sound, presence,
everything. They built it. Like,
we're going to build you into being
human.
Versus
she's
that's
not
the opposite.
Married. She's never been pregnant. Come on, man. Like, all that stuff happens to natural artists as they're coming up, because they're not used to all these influences that are coming into their life. You'll see all these things, drugs, all these things happen to these people. Why isn't it happening in this situation? It's because this is who was engineered to do this. She gets the business. She gets it like a business person would. She's not attached to it like a person who had to come up hard she doesn't have the connection that a person that come up hard had to come up with. And so I'm not shitting on Taylor. Like, I know that people are going to perceive it like this, and I'm not at all. I'm shitting on the way that it was orchestrated, because again, this is when we started highly seeing, like, auto-tune be used on a lot of her stuff and be used across the board. There are people now that are on country radio that have never been to Nashville. There are people now that are on country radio that's never been to the South. Like, and I'm not saying country's just about the South, but that's where it came from. And, you know, it's about poor country people living hard life. I mean, if you want to talk about genres, I think rap and country should be the closest thing ever. You have poor people here and poor people here, inner city poor people, country poor people, singing about poor times. That's what it is. So I've never been against country and rap working together. I think that they're closer in genre than anything else.
You just made a breakthrough for me, though. You have the damaged, passionate artist that has a bleeding heart that's pouring out, that's doing the therapy that you spoke about earlier.
Right.
They are using music as therapy, and hopefully that can take them to a high level, versus someone that comes in and says, this is what I need to become to blow up.
Exactly.
And there's a lack of, I don't know, that doesn't feel as genuine. I don't know.
It's not. And if you want proof of it, watch how easily she flowed from country right into pop. Now, you've seen it before, but usually if a country artist goes pop, they go back to country. It's country, pop, back. It's not country, pop. This is where I was trying to get, y'all. I've been trying to get to pop because I knew that I'm going to get more eyeballs. It was all like, we're going to launch you with country because you're this, you know, and I believe that they're like, we're going to start you in country because it's going to be easier for you. It's more forgiving for a 16-year-old girl to not be perfect. She's not going to sound like, but I at the time that Taylor launched, I could found you about 17 to 30 other 16-year-old girls in Nashville that could, with pipes that would blow and could write, sing, and play better than Taylor ever could to this day. But they didn't get it because they didn't have, one, the family backing, the money backing, and they didn't have the mentality. They were in it for the songs they were writing, the love that they had in it. And I think Taylor, like you said, it was manufactured to be like, this is the progression. And our end progression is to get you in front of as many eyes as we can. You're a businesswoman now. And whatever we got to do to make your voice, to make your songs, to make, you know, people outraged, we're going to do it. You know, they did it wonderfully. I mean, it's almost like magic how they did it. You know, anybody else that's had as many boyfriends as Taylor Swift would just be like, man, what's this hoe doing? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but she turned it into, hey, another song. I'm the problem. I'm the problem. It's me. It's done great. You know, it's like, hey, we're going to get in front of everything else. But when you've got somebody that understands the business and really is not attached to anything, it's easy to lead them to where you want them to go. And
is it, so her father was directly donating to her record label, but I'm sure as she blew up, she probably ended up signing to different labels. But because she came from that
she stayed with the same country label all the way till the end, until she went to pop.
Because I was going to say, how does she avoid, you know, even if you understand the business and everything, I mean, the organizations at the top, they're like gangsters. They're just like, we don't care if you know what we're doing to you to screw you over. This is how it's going to work, or else. How does she avoid that?
Because they had daddy's pocketbook. So it was like, you know, hey, Taylor's great. Could your dad get us another check, you think? Blah, 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 blah. Because the label, she was almost an independent. It wasn't a major label. She was, as she got bigger, it became what's called a major independent. But it wasn't, even to this day, I don't know if they have another artist on their label that was even close. I think they tried to sign Tim McGraw.
She's not still with, she left when she went to pop into another label. You're saying.
Right. And that people that will follow the timeline, that's when all the Scooter Braun stuff, like Scooter Braun bought her catalog from her country label.
I saw this on some Instagram thing, and she was like freaking out about it.
Oh yeah, she flipped out. Like, it happens every day in the world. Like, Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog. It happens all the time. And so it's not like she made it like this is the first time it's ever happened in music, and she just can't have this guy. Scooter Braun is not a bad person. Like, and this dude took so much. And even worse, a buddy of mine who's a Marine Corps veteran and a country artist, his name's Scooter Brown. And he had to put up like, I'm not Scooter Braun. Please stop sending me hate mail. Like, I don't.
So he did like a standard business procedure.
It's a business deal. He bought a catalog from another person who owned. So basically, Taylor leaves her record label for country and goes to pop. She's got this country record label now, just sitting there like, all right, what do we do now? We don't have our. So what he does have is he has her masters, because he paid, you know, to have those done. He was the one that was putting her out there. So he's got these masters. So with those masters, he can sell those to anybody he wants to. And so he sells them to Scooter Braun, which is, Scooter Braun had managed Justin Bieber and a lot of, great artists. He's not a bad person. He's just doing a business deal. And then Taylor and the minions that follow this, the Swifties, they ruined this dude's life. Like, they were sending him hate mail and death threats and all this because he bought something that was offered to him. And then
to him, it's like the buying and selling of a stock, it sounds like.
It's
he was
exactly like
if
that.
This might go up in value, I'm going to purchase it. And
so it'd be like if me and you owned a house together and you decided you wanted a bigger house and you left and I took over the house and I was like, oh shit, I can't make the payments. And then I sold it to another dude. And then you, with a big fan following, went on your podcast and like, Stephen Cochran's a piece of shit because he sold my house. But I got a bigger house now. I left him with that little shit house and he couldn't make the payments and he sold it and he's a piece of shit now. And she didn't just go after Scooter. She went after the dude who helped make her. Like, the dude who was running her record label in country music was just trying to survive. I got to sell this so that I can keep this label going so I can have other young artists have the opportunity that Taylor did. But she goes and makes it a big deal, ruins these dudes' lives, and then goes and negates that business deal by going and re-recording all those songs again and then releasing them.
Wow, so even though someone purchases your masters, that's a good point. Why couldn't you just go and create brand new masters?
Bro, she's a businesswoman, man. She's a businesswoman.
The scary thing about that is, though, if you have a following like that and you don't clearly explain what's happening and like the fact that that's a very normal deal, that guy was just basically purchasing an asset that he thought he could sell for more or that had value, and you don't explain that clearly, you can have this angry mob try to destroy regular people, and that is that you said integrity earlier in your podcast.
That's not
that
integrity.
Is an extreme lack of integrity.
There's no integrity in that, and it's so bad to think about. Like, these are people making business deals that are made every day. Like I said, Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog, and for her to go and use her. Dude, this chick is influencing elections with her fan base. Like, I mean, Dolly Parton said a long time ago, I learned if I wanted to be in the entertainment business, I'd keep my mouth shut about politics. And yet, you'll see these artists nowadays that are just throwing their weight and their fan bases behind these candidates. When, let me tell you something, no one that's big in country music probably has a college degree, because they were spending all their time writing songs and shit like that. I wouldn't listen to me about politics. I wouldn't listen to Taylor Swift about politics. She's 30 years old.
But her followers will.
Oh, of course they will. They'll listen to her about anything. I mean, that's what is fan short for? Fanatic. Fanatics is not a good thing. That's not like when people are fanatical. And the funny thing is that what all these fans don't know is there's a industry term for them. When you think you're a super fan and you show up at Taylor's everything and you're wearing Taylor Swift head to toe and you're like, Taylor, I made this picture for you. And she's like, I love you. Thank you so
much.
much.
Psychopath.
She walks on her bus and she goes, did you see that germ? Did you see that germ out there? They call them germs. When you're a super fan, the industry likes to call you a germ. How fucked up is that? You're spending all your money and your time to love this artist and what they do, and they make fun of you behind your back. See, I have a few big fans that are still with me today that whatever I do, they come out and I would make it my point to go and seek. If I saw them, that's someone that's helping me live my dream. This is somebody that believes in my dream with me.
Well, and you've obviously made a tremendous impact on them. You're a part of their identity now.
Who knows what you saved them from?
Exactly. Maybe they're still alive today because of you, and yet you're going to walk away and say that, like, look at that.
Look at that fucking germ. Yeah. So I would go, like, I was kind of known for, like, being an over-hugger. Like, I just would grab them and hug them as tight as I could because I wanted them to understand, like, how much I
value you.
Exactly. But I would even have, different handlers that would be like, hey, man, what about that germy motherfucker? And I'd be like, dude, we don't use that term. Matter of fact, I nicked him, my fan club's called the Cousins, spelled C-U-Z-I-N, Cochran Cousins, because, where I'm from in Eastern Kentucky, we're all related anyway, so come be a part of my family. And so it was even funny when me and my wife got married, people would send her emails and be like, I'm just a cousin. And she'd be like, you got so many cousins. Like, what? I got another cousin. I was like, are they spelling it like cousin or with a Z? And she's like, they're spelling it with a Z. Do they spell really well in Eastern? And I was like, no, they're my fan club. But I wanted them to feel like family. That we don't call my fans germs. We're not going to call them germs. These are. I don't even call them fans. I don't like to call them fans because I don't think fanatic is a great. Well, let's call them carnies.
Supporters.
Exactly. You're supporters. You're investors. That's who's really investing in you. Because if you're not selling CDs, if you're not selling merchandise, if you're not selling out your concerts, you're not going to have a record deal.
Without them, what are you?
You're playing
just
in a bar.
Person healing yourself.
Yeah, you're playing in a bar somewhere for a bunch of drunk people who don't like your songs. Oh, no, you're back on Broadway playing Johnny Cash. That's what you're doing.
So here's a question for you, because you're very type A personality. You're very strong-willed. You did military tours. You're not going to put up with bullshit. Like me. Like, I'm a professional fighter.
Right.
I don't care what type of executive order you put out. If it's ridiculous, I'm not following it.
Yeah.
It's that simple. With that being said, you start to learn the business, Stephen. You start to see the dark side of things. You witness some of the bullshit that's taking place. You probably have a road in front of you of, do I play this game and go this direction and do this, or do I refuse and put my foot down and think that I can change things, or do I just walk away from it? When you started to identify what it would actually take for you to move up in the music industry, what is that moment like? Because you're a very assertive person that, like, you wouldn't want a door to be closed in your face that you think you can open.
Yeah, and so that's what the meat comes down to. Like, you think of country radio. Like I said earlier, country music genre is probably more patriotic than any other genre out there, right? And I'll even say this. If you look at your favorite country music artist, right when they were about to break big, right, they all have this point where they have to have, like, this military song. Whether the song has anything to do with the military at all, they'll be like playing their guitar in the middle of a battlefield, Keith Urban, and or something. And Keith Urban's a great guy. I'm not knocking on him at all. But it's set up that way because the record labels know for you to break to that top, to that tippity tip 0.1%, which is where there's 7. You're the top 5, top
Toby
10.
Keith had a big one that blew up. I can't remember it, but it just popped in my head.
I put a boot in your ass, and that's American way. When Uncle Sam, yeah. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
He had Toby Keith's whole career. He's got American Soldier.
That was the other one I was thinking about.
Yeah, he's got the Afghanistan song. I mean, I played a lot of shows with Toby. We had the same publicist for a long time. I kind of figured out later on, like, man, am I validating this dude? Like,
well, it makes sense. You have a massive, massive group of people that are going to have that strong patriotic sense, that are going to need that healing through some type of thing like music.
By the way, let's pray for Toby. He's got stomach cancer, so he's fighting that. So everybody out there, please, Toby has done a lot for the military and goes over and plays. So I definitely want to send some prayers out and good vibes to him. Let's get him.
I did not know
that.
Healthy.
Yeah, he's been fighting for a while. So he's. I know he had just posted some stuff up, and I think he's starting to sing a little bit more. But it's been a good year, I think, that he's been battling stomach cancer now, and he's lost a lot of weight. And so let's pray for Toby and let's get him back out on the road.
100%.
But yeah, it's so you've got those. But when you think of all of country music and you think about how much they need to be patriotic with their music, how many combat veterans would you think? You just think like, oh man, there's so many combat veterans out there that are big stars. Well, name one.
Most of the time they didn't actually start. Even like Bruce Springsteen had Born in the USA, which was like what, like everybody was patriotic.
But there's a lot who served. Like George Strait was in the Army. Jamie
but
Johnson's
combat
the
veterans.
Combat, like
that's
actually
different.
went to combat.
There's a lot of military.
George Jones was the Marine. Willie Nelson was the Air Force. Never saw combat. Craig Morgan was an Army Ranger. I think he went to Somalia, which is still, that's combat. So you got one. And then where's everybody else at? Well, if you're talking about extreme combat over the point of, half of my career, I've got Iraq and Afghanistan, both invasions. I was also an infantry and reconnaissance scout. So I'm it.
That's why I'm having
insane.
trouble put these pieces together, because when I look at your story and I look at all the pieces of the puzzle and I understand business and I look at why are you not primed to be the exact guy, like you're what they're looking for to blow it up.
To not take anything away from Toby Keith, I'm Toby Keith. Toby Keith singing songs about shit I did. So, the thing is like, if Toby can be big singing songs about things I did, why shouldn't I have made it there being like, I actually did this? I'm not singing about my dad. Like, my daddy lost his right eye. I couldn't walk. I wrote a song called Pieces about learning to walk again. It was actually another artist had a song called Pieces, and they kind of came out at the same time, and they promoted his more than mine because at the time I wasn't on a record label. So they were like blackballing me almost. Like, you're not going to play the game. We're not going to let you play the game now. Yeah, you're still our Marine, and we'll still call you on Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and we'll poke you up like our injured, like our crippled puppet. And then the rest of the year, we'll forget about you, and we'll come back to you on those days that we need veterans. Because I didn't play the game. Like you said, there was a crossroads where I came to where it's like, do I sell my integrity or do I stay with what I'm what I've been taught to do my entire life. And, you know, I've been told by some of the biggest guys in this business that they've talked to even their major record labels and like, why aren't we signing Stephen Cochran? He can write, he can play, he has a great show, he's a great band, he's already got a following. And they were like, what if we tell him no? And he's like, what are you talking about? He was like, well, if we tell him no, he might kill us all. And that's insanity. Like I've never fought anyone in this business. I've never threatened to fight anyone in this business. Well, I don't know about that. But I've handled it like a businessman when I had to. But like if you're going to tell me some shit, like you're going to throw me out a window or something like that, well, bitch, you better know how to fly because you're coming with me. Like they know that's the point where you're going to push me so far and then you're going to get the Marine. Like I'll be Steve, the singer-songwriter, all day long, and we can have a great recourse to the business. You're going to start threatening me. I mean, good luck.
It is like that at the top.
I know of a story that I just heard like 3 years ago from another guy who I don't want to.
You don't have to say his name unless you want to.
Okay, so his name's Daryl Worley, and he's a big country singer. He had a lot of country hits out and some about military too. And him and his record label had gotten into a skirmish, and they basically threatened to throw him out a window if he didn't. You know, because here's the thing, man. Like there's. Get murdered when I go back to Nashville. I mean, like you can trace music goes back to business. Business goes back to money. Money usually goes back to corruption. And when you have corrupt people in charge of those, I mean, so one of the big leaders of one of the major record labels in Nashville's name was Joe Galante.
That's the gangster.
But he probably, and that's the thing is you can 2 + 2 still equals 4. And if you're country music and you've got an Italian guy from New Jersey that's in charge of the record label.
There was a Gigante gangster from New Jersey that I thought was named Joe. Something just like that.
Joe Galante was this guy's name. I don't know if he's still alive, but I'll probably get some phone calls after that too. I don't give a shit. But like I said, you know, I have.
But why can't both people win together? Because at the end of the day, if you bring value,
yep.
if you can connect with this audience, you can pack stadiums, you can be a big hit, and the record label can make a ton of money. You can make a ton of money. Why is that not just a partnership?
Because it's greed. I mean, they want to. But if you have the same amount of money that they have, then you have an opinion. And you can't have an opinion. And if you say no, then you're listed as a difficult artist. And so if you're a difficult artist, well, then we just can't work with you. When really all you were just saying was, like, I don't want to wear my dress blues on American Idol with long blonde. You know, I don't want to do this or something. You know, it's just a lot of things that you have to stand up for that even a part of being a business, they don't understand the military. So when they're like, hey, I got this idea. This is, you know, you're going to salute while you're in. You're like, well, I'm a Marine. We don't salute indoors. And they're just like, you're not a Marine anymore. And you're like, I'm always a Marine. They're like, come on, that's not.
So they're going to tell you how to do everything. They're going to tell you exactly how to live, breathe, speak, how you show up, where you're going, and if you don't do it the way that they want, they're unhappy.
Hey, we've noticed you've gotten a little fat. We got you a trainer, or we got you a gym membership, or we noticed that your hairline's receding a little bit. We need to fill that in. And I mean, it comes down to everything. You don't have to just be, and it's changing a lot. You know, see in music, especially country music, it used to be like you had to be a model almost, and you could write songs, and you had to be able to play. And it's like now you have to be a social media influencer and a model. And it's like you got very few sneaking through that aren't in that like cookie cutter of, you know, wears a 32 or 30 size waist and has a chiseled chin and a six-pack. And it's like, really? This guy's the best country singer? I guarantee you I can find three people like me with dad bods that can outright them and sing them under the table. So it's like,
but it's a business like everything else.
It's a business, exactly. And so, you know, you're the fantasy, and that's what the thing is they've got to make everybody at home want to be that girl or want to be that guy, even if it's unattainable to that person. Because
that's not real. If you're doing all these things that aren't organic, you're putting up a prop of yourself.
If you're wearing a toupee and you're painting yourself, you know, with a tan, and you're wearing makeup all the time and it's perfect, and you're on television every day, and you've got a trainer, and all you got to do every day is get up and go to that trainer and take steroids to look like that. And you're not telling anybody you're taking steroids, by the way. You're just like, no, God gave me this. I have a six-pack. Yo, listen, you got a six-pack, bro. You know what the hell it takes. You got to be doing this all the time. I got a keg, and I live life. That's what I do. So it's like it's not attainable unless you have a crew working on you. But this is what we put out as the standard. Like, I would rather people go out and say, let's go to a Luke Combs concert. Dude's got a dad bod, but he can sing his ass off. You know, you're looking at that and Jelly Roll and some of the guys that are coming through that aren't
Yeah, like how does a jelly roll make it? That's a great question.
That's organic, man. That's some real stuff. Like that's Jelly Roll's been in Nashville. He's born and raised Nashville. Like this is where he went to school at, and where all of his friends. When I saw him at the concert the other day in Walled Lake, he still had a lot of his friends that he grew up with him. And so that's an organic thing. That's something that you don't see rarely. They don't but like one or two of those squeak through. You remember Zach Brown and Luke Combs, and these guys are the ones that they may not have expected to make it, but they did because they put in the real work. Like these guys are really working. These guys are really, really working, man, and not calling their fans germs. They're spending time with their fans. They're building fan bases the way it used to be built, where you start in a bar and you slowly, gradually, like you start with 2 people. Next week you got 10 people. You got 20 people. Then a month later you may have 100 people at your show, and the word of mouth keeps going through. And when you build your fan base like that, when the record labels get rid of you or they decide your day's over with, you still got those fans. But when you're given a fan base and you didn't build and work with them, which I got to say, that goes back to Taylor again. They did it slowly so that she built those fans, but they were structuring it like a business. And so it's like a businesswoman and a business person, so they could both see eye to eye on the direction. But when you have a creative person who has their own mind of direction, and then you have this business plan, they usually don't work out together.
It's wild, this whole conversation. You probably have to go soon because I don't want you to be late to your next interview. What time do you have to be out of here?
2:30.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
This interview reminds me of, did you ever know the band Stained with it's been a while?
Yeah.
And then he disappeared for a while. And then he came back with that country music hit.
Yep.
What's the name of the song?
Aaron Lewis.
Aaron Lewis.
Yeah. And and that's the thing with him too, is that he kind of got into the business.
He talked about making a deal with the devil in LA, sign here, all your songs will play.
It's the truth. And it's
this whole conversation
when you're
is reminiscent
selling your
of that
soul, it's not like the devil showing up but it kind of is. It's like, I'll make your dreams come true. All you got to do is sign this contract, and then all these songs that you write about, I get to pick which ones go on the radio. So, Pieces didn't get played. Why? Because it would probably save some people's lives. The VA uses it to show spouses what veterans go through when they're dealing with post-traumatic stress. Think about, this song went #1 in Europe. Europe. I just signed a deal with the Hallmark Channel to do my life story. They're out of Canada. So you're telling me Europe and Canada cares more about our American veterans and the story that we have that's going to help save lives than America does. Because all country radio had to do was put Pieces on and play the shit out of it. And guess what? All those veterans who had locked themselves in their house that may have been listening to that radio station, they ended up taking their lives, may have had a little bit of hope. But instead, they said, we can't do it because his record label, he don't have a record label, ain't giving us a bunch of money. And they say pay for play is dead in country radio, and that's bullshit too, because I've seen it happen. It may not be like, hey, send me $10,000 and I'll play your artist. But it's like, hey, I really like the Bahamas. Oh, cool, we have these vouchers for you and your wife to go to the Bahamas, but this is our artist.
Is it really a top of a pyramid type deal where a very small group of people controls the whole machine?
Yeah. So country radio, the way they program it is, if you're a major country radio station, they usually only program about 20 songs. And those 20 songs are going to be your top 10 so it's weighted. Every time that they play a song, you get the points of the station. So here in Detroit, we got WYCD. They're like a 10-point station because you get the points for your population. So there's really only one major country station here, which is WYCD. So they get the points for the entire population of Detroit and their surrounding area. Whereas in Nashville, we got 4 or 5 country radio stations. So they're competing for the whole population. So you'd think Nashville, if I get my song played in Nashville, that's the big time. But really, you're getting 3 points per spin in Nashville, where if I get 1 spin in Detroit, I'm getting 10 points. So you got to get Detroit to start playing you heavy, and then get all these other major stations that are weighted heavy to start playing you heavy, and that's how you climb up the charts. But the way that it was set up was we have secondary radio, and then we have major market radio, right? So what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to start on the secondary stations, which are smaller stations, 100,000 watts, and they don't usually get a lot of love. So when you're small artists coming up, they're really excited to see you because they don't get a lot of people from Nashville who are signed to a record deal. So you're supposed to make to where you get all the secondary. Now, once you get the secondary, it's called an indicator, where it's indicating you're a hit. At that point, you're in the top 60. So it's like we're indicating this is a hit artist. Then you're supposed to start visiting the major market radio stations. Once you get up to the top, like the 10-pointers, like WYCD and stuff like that, you're supposed to start down here and work up to the top of that pyramid. That doesn't happen for major artists. They don't start down here. They start up here. And so then it's like all these poor secondary stations, they never get to see Carrie Underwood. They never get to see, because she's not giving them love like she's given these major market stations. So with us independent artists, we've got to start down here and work our way up. And hopefully you meet in the middle. And when you get to that top, now you've got to combat all the majors. Now you've got to go to these major market radio stations and convince them that you're better than Keith Urban and that you've got to give me Keith Urban's slot. Good luck with that. Good luck, because Keith Urban's record label is a billion-dollar corporation. The record label I was on, maybe $1 million operation, like maybe millions of dollars. Nowhere near Sony or Capitol or Warner. You can't compete. And so you really have to almost get these program directors to risk their job to put you on the radio, which when I say it like that, it's almost more spectacular that we ever had a hit. Because I did convince a lot of these guys, especially here in Detroit. I owe WYCD my whole career almost. Like they have supported everything that I've ever put out. Tim Roberts is the program director. He's amazing. Steve Grunwald, Dr. Don, all the guys we grew up with listening to here in Michigan. I got to play 2 hoedowns here, Arts, Beats, and Eats, a 10-man jam. They always open the doors for me. And a lot of stations in Nashville, a lot of major market stations across the country really helped me out because they really believed in my message. They believed in what I was doing. But at the same time, when your boss comes and says, okay, we're done playing this game. You play major artist only or you're fired. And then they even went farther than that. They started programming them from like New York and LA. So like not even, your hometown radio station may not be programmed in your hometown. And it definitely, they're definitely not getting their list of what songs they're allowed to play because of what you want to hear in your hometown. Like, tell me how many great country artists we have from all over the nation. Why shouldn't their hometown stations be pumping them and get them now? If I'm from Pikeville, Kentucky, and I've got some bangers in Pikeville, all right, tell me this. Why wasn't Pikeville, Kentucky radio station the one that launched Chris Stapleton? Because guess what? He's from the county right over. He wasn't, they wouldn't even hardly play him there before he was a major artist in his hometown. They never played me in my hometown until I had a record deal. You should be launching from your hometown, not Nashville. Earn your area like back in the day, and then you make it big.
I feel like you're speaking idealistically in the way that it should be done, but yeah, the machine just wins. I mean, that's why Jake Paul can go into boxing and become the face of boxing. Conor McGregor never did a professional boxing bout, gets to fight Floyd Mayweather. If you're a brand and they know that people have eyes on you and you have a following, the money is just what's going to move the metrics.
And that's what they're doing now is they made it even simpler because they don't really sign people to record labels. What they do is they go and troll the internet, and they find these internet successes who have fan bases already, and then they sign them. So there's really they don't have to be like, we're going to put all this money and it may hit and it may not. These people already have a fan base, so it's just super easy.
You could go on YouTube now.
Kane Brown is one of the biggest country singers out there. They found him on YouTube.
I was going to say, you could go on YouTube right now and type in like teenager singing this and find someone that gets 100,000 views on their video, and you now have your artist.
You would think that Jelly Roll was the biggest country rapper. He's not. There's a dude named Upchurch the Redneck. Ryan Upchurch. And he started, and he's still on YouTube only. He releases, this dude's got huge hits. Like, I'm talking, go look up Upchurch when we leave here and look at the views on his. I'm talking like 26 million, 15 million, 5 million, 6 million. Like, it's crazy. And he just puts songs out on the internet, and what he'll do is he'll do a rap song, and then he'll do a traditional country song, like way more traditional than Jelly's. Like, I'm talking like this dude was raised in my dad's town. Like, it's a tiny country town called Ashland City, and he will put out songs by himself. He's not on a record deal. He is a true I do this my shit independent, and
that's incredible.
Yeah, and he's doing it, man. He's doing it. He's like the first one I've ever seen to just be like, y'all, I'm doing this on my own. And he doesn't bow to anybody, like anybody. I've never seen it done. He's kind of the only one I've seen him do it. He's tried to take, Jelly's tried to give him flack. A lot of people's tried. He even kind of took offense because Jelly told on a radio station that Ryan Upchurch would be a good one to cross over in the country, but he just loves rap so much. And then Upchurch was like, bro, what's the 13 hits that I've had that are country songs? And so it's still the game, man. I mean, they've tried to sign him. Matter of fact, they brought him into some of the largest record labels in Nashville, and he recorded the audio and then went and made a music video about telling them to fuck off, and had Taylor Swift's, the dude, so the label that used to have Taylor Swift, they brought him in. And he has a music video where he has a dude dressed up like the dude who ran the record label for Taylor, and he's like telling him how he can make him a big star, and like they're making fun of the whole business. And so he's got a cult.
What's the name of that video, just so I can watch it?
I don't know. I have to look it up again. But if you go do a deep dive on Upchurch, all you got to do is type in like Upchurch makes fun of Taylor Swift's record label. But yeah, it's and then he has he completely
it really
breaks
is
down.
Incredible that he's breaking the system.
Oh, he's broke it. He's broke the system. If anybody has the intelligence to go and look what he did and follow his game plan, they don't need Nashville.
But did he make the money?
He's making more than money because he don't share it with anybody.
That's true. I mean, I guess if you're reaping all the royalties and profits, oh my God.
He's got like a manager, he's got a booking agent, and he's got a publicist, and that's it. And he ain't giving 10% to 30% to a record label and another to some manager. He's got people that he trusts around him. And, of course, he's had to find out the hard way when money comes in. It don't erase all your problems. But seriously, if people want to follow someone that's doing the business the way I think it should be done, follow Upchurch.
So you just mentioned 30% real quick, but earlier you said like 90-10. What do you think the average contract is that comes out of Nashville? Like what would people expect? And I know that it's all over the map based on your value.
Well, it's really based all over the map on what kind of people you have around you and how much they can convince you that you need them. So if you have a self-worth and you're like, man, I know what the fuck I got. You ain't going to do this shit to me. Then you're going to get a better deal. But I think all of them are generally 360s. So it doesn't matter whether you get a 50-50 deal. Why are you splitting 50% of everything you're doing? If I write a book,
existence.
Exactly. So there's no.
I don't know how anyone would ever sign that ever, because I mean the record label is going to sell you. Well, we're going to build you up to be such a big star that's why you're going to be successful in your other endeavors.
Oh, dude, I was even told like, look, man, ain't nobody gonna put no more money into you. You can barely walk, and we really don't know how much time you got left in this business. You need us.
Then why would you be talking to me right now? Why are we having this conversation right now?
Because that's their whole plan is they've got to destroy your worth or they cannot control you. But it's a weird business because they've got to destroy you, but they also got to have you believe that you're great because you got to go out on stage. Nobody that's ever walked on stage with a guitar in their head doesn't think they're the best doing it. Because it's the same thing. When you walk in a cage, if you don't believe you're the best in that cage, what the fuck are you doing in that cage?
It's just hilarious to me because if someone was sitting down trying to negotiate why I should work with them and why I should sign with them while trying to tell me that my value is here, it's like, why are you interested in this camaraderie then, in this partnership?
Oh, because they'll be like, well, we just want to help a veteran see his dreams come true.
It's just the kindness of your heart. I'm positive that's why you're here.
Remember I told you that the one thing I was saying to me was, well, you didn't tell me you want to be a millionaire. You told me you want to live your dream. I helped you live your dream. I was like, I live my dream, and I also live in an apartment on the side of the studio. I'm driving the same truck I was driving when I signed this record deal.
So we have about 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure we end with your record label. You said you got to be out of here by 2:30.
Yeah.
So what I would love to do is you have your own record label now.
So you just launched that, basically. We hadn't launched it yet. I have a management company right now. We've got Tyler J. is one of our artists, as well as Micah Howard, Chris Turner, Sal Gonzalez, Doc Gaskins, that we're representing in the management field.
So you're just in the management field right now, but possibly one day you're
Nope, it's 100%. I'm going to let you'll break the news here today. We are launching Label 22 by the end of the year. It will be the first ever veteran-owned, non-for-profit record label. So even if I wanted to screw you, I can't take your money. Like, all we want to do is, and my motto is this is not your landing zone. This is your launching field. We're going to be the one that launch your career. That way, when we get them to where I think that we can get them to a bigger label, we can sit down and help negotiate that deal so that they're not signing these fucked up contracts. And guess what? I'll put this warning out to every record label in Nashville. If you thought I was hard to deal with as an artist, motherfuckers, stand by. Because when I walk in to negotiate for my artist, you better be ready to get the Marine and the Bull, because we ain't taking less than what I know they're worth.
And that's the best agent ever to have on your side. The best manager is someone that's been through the system, that is seen behind the curtain, that knows the person pulling the levers. That's the person you want on your side.
Bro, if they thought Suge Knight was a beast in rap, like, they ain't seen Stephen Cochran as a manager yet. Because I'm real with it. Like, this is the thing is that when we come in, if you disrespect me and my artist, you will never see us again. And I promise you, I've got guys that we're working with that in 4 years, they're going to be some of the biggest, whether it be independent, the way that Upchurch did it, or whether we get radio support. Because I'm begging all the program directors out there that hopefully listen to this to check your integrity and start remembering what you got into radio for. Start remembering what you got into music for, and start supporting those artists that you know that are doing it the right way. Fuck this shit with these record labels. We can do this right, and it may take us taking over some of these radio stations and getting independent people to buy them back from Clear Channel, or starting our own internet radio. Whatever we got to do to make sure this bullshit ends. The last time that we saw it happen, Willie Whalen, it's called The Outlaws, Willie Whalen, Chris Christopherson, Johnny Cash, they went to Texas and they were like, we're going to do this on our own. Willie was putting out songs that said, called Radio, a record executive, it says, we're making you rich and you're already lazy, so just sit on your ass and get richer or write your own damn songs. That's the last time we saw something like that. But guess what? Nashville learned that we're never going to let that happen again. Well, guess what? It's going to happen again. You're either going to work with us and we're going to be partners, or we're going to take over. I'm not here to take part. What was it Connor said? I'm not here to take part. I'm here to take over. And that's the real deal. We're going to attack this like I'm attacking a country. I have a game plan. I have a strategy. And if we have to take it all over, then that's what we'll be. And guess what? You may not hear anything on country radio but veterans. And why not? If they can do it just as good as the people that you're hearing sing our songs, because we have lots of combat veteran singer-songwriters. Sam Tate wrote If You're Going Through Hell for Rodney Adkins, Moments for Emerson Drive, but he wasn't allowed to have his own career as an artist. It's bullshit. So it's either going to be we're going to let some of us in, or we're going to let all of us in.
You know, the people you want to support in life too are the genuine people that actually are the representation of what you want them to be.
And, dude, why would you, if you, like I'm telling you, right now, all the stuff that you see from a lot, out of all my years, I've got 20 years as an artist. I've got longer as being the son of an artist in this business. And I can name 3 people maybe that you've seen in major music that are like the people that you see on TV. Aaron Tippin, John Anderson, Clint Black. Those are like the greatest dudes I've ever met in music. Like, they've always been the people that they've represented on television. And I've met thousands of country artists. They're good people, but they're not what they're doing on television. They're not putting the same product behind the scenes that they're putting out. I would say Aaron, John, Clint, those are the same people all day, every day. They look in the mirror. And there's a lot I haven't met, so I'm not knocking everybody. I'm just talking about the people that I've met and gotten to have relationships with. Those are genuine as they come. And I hold their friendships and mentorships dearly to my, Aaron is like family to me. Aaron Tippin is like, he's like another dad. In fact, him and my dad did tour together. So, I mean, it's like having him close and being able to call him for information, because he's still out there touring and stuff. So he's still in the business and still can help me get a pulse on things. And so those guys, but to think those are the only genuine, like for me, okay, so why wouldn't you want to take a guy who's been trained in honor, courage, commitment? Oh, by the way, he also was going to give his life for you. His songs are great. He sings just as good as anybody that's on the radio. Why not give that guy a shot? Why not make that guy the next big? Why can't he be Garth Brooks? Because Garth Brooks got some good patriotic songs out there, but Garth didn't do it. This guy did, and he can sing just as good as Garth. Why can't he be the guy? That's the question I want answered.
It's a great question to ask, man. And it's honestly a great pursuit. And I can tell that you're fired up about it.
Dude.
And I think the next 5-10 years of your life are going to be some of the most exciting, because you have a lot of battles ahead.
Yeah.
This is like, you better be laying out your battle plans because you have battles ahead. But you know what? Once a warrior, you got a fire in your heart.
Bro, it's not for me to worry about my battle plan. It's for them to figure out how they're going to stop me. And that's the good part, because I don't think they can. And, building relationships like we have here with Vet Life and all the organizations like Vet, that's what they don't understand, is that I've got 10 years of building organizations and building relationships with these veteran organizations. We may be 1% of the population, but we are the scariest 1% in the world. And if I can get the veteran population excited about these artists and get them up and call on these radio stations and call on the record labels and letting them know this is an attack. Like, this is an attack on bullshit. So, yeah, stand by.
At the end of the day, the people control everything. If you stop listening to what, you stop paying attention to the major artists and you start looking into the more, the people with integrity that come from your communities that are trying to live their dream, that are speaking from their heart. Right. They're not just presenting you a brand and an image. That's a movie. That's like being on screen and they're just selling you, hey, this is who I am and I'm perfect and you should model your life after me, or whatever I believe you should believe. Right. Instead, if we just said, no, we're going to separate from that stuff. We're not just going to be zombies that follow or, sheep that follow whatever it is. We are going to find and support the right people. We see that Stephen is bringing a conglomerate of these people, and this is a better movement.
And I think it's headed that way, man. I really do. I think that we've got a good, if we're ever going to do this, this is the time to do it, man. You see with people starting to support and realize that, hey, man, I can't achieve that, and they know that I can't achieve that. But I want somebody that looks like me doing this so that I can understand.
Now more than ever, too, people want authenticity.
Right.
Because of social media, because of all the bullshit out there, because of people showing their highlights and never their flaws. People want authenticity. Yep. So I think, man, I think your battle plan's coming at a good time. I'm eager to see the journey unfold. I enjoyed sitting down with you today. We shot 2.5 hours of content like it was nothing. And man, I just really hope to continue seeing your story unfold, and it was a pleasure to sit with you today.
It's great to talk. Thanks for having me back, man. Like I said, I'm just down the road. I'll come down and let y'all whoop my ass a few times, get me back into shape. But thank you for everything, man. And again, check out Vet Life, check out Stop 22 Tour, Label 22, Romans Warrior Foundation, and the Wall of Remembrance. If you are out there and you have an organization or something that's putting on an event, we have the Wall of Remembrance, which is the only moving wall that is a memorial to our OIF and OEF, which is Iraq, Afghanistan, killed in action veterans. So it's moving across the country. It's on its way to North Dakota right now. We're trying to get it up here to Vet Fest. And so please go check those out. Support those organizations and just help us get these veterans the life that they fought to have. That's all I'm asking.
And final thing, let's say an artist out there watched this podcast and was like, that's the guy I need to be with. That's the gentleman that I would want to be my agent. How should they contact you, Stephen?
So I'm only representing veterans right now. Eventually, I hope to open it up to where we can. We've got a full roster that we're looking at to help, and I want you to still reach out. If you're a veteran, you need help, you think that you've got the it factor to make it in this business and also the backbone that we're going to go through these battles, I'm not hard to find. StephenCochran.com is still out there. Send me a message on StephenCochran.com, and I'll reach out, because what we do is we're still pushing guys around the country playing with Stop 22. So we're always eager to have those artists, whether it be rock, country, rap. We've got rap artists, the Marine Rapper. We've got rock artist, Doc Gaskins, a rock artist. So it's not any genre. If you're in any genre and you want to be a part of this movement, shoot me a message at StephenCochran.com, and we'll start getting you out on the road playing with Stop 22.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining with me today, and I'll wrap this episode up.
Thanks, brother.